A hard-edged black craft hangs off the T-38's left side, so close Dylan can make out seams that don't match any metalwork he's ever seen. Then its skin thins like smoked glass, and he sees a small figure inside, long-limbed, head too large, moving across a grid of light as if it's operating the object by touch. The figure turns and acknowledges them, not waving exactly, more like it's confirming, "We see you." Dylan Fisk has built his whole career on teaching people not to panic at night. In a T-38, the dark can make your brain lie, so he drills the same rule into every student. Trust the gauges, trust the checklist, trust the airframe. Alyssa Brewer sits in his wing that evening to learn exactly that discipline, the kind that keeps you alive when the desert turns into a featureless void. But after what they see up there, they stop being instructor and trainee and become something else in the eyes of people they never meet. Their report doesn't travel up the normal chain. It vanishes into a quieter route, the kind with unmarked doors and borrowed badges. And in that silence, Dylan realizes the most unsettling detail isn't the object itself. It's the way the system reacts, as if it has been waiting for them to look. From inside the dark geometry, the alien watches Dylan and Alyssa in a thin metal shell pretending to be brave. One of them tightens his hands on the controls and chooses discipline over hunger. The other writes marks against the glass, as if symbols can hold the sky in place. The alien does not need eyes to read them. It tastes their fear as interference, their training as a clean pattern, their bond as a single signal split into two voices. Alyssa tries to name what she sees, then swallows the word, and that restraint is noted. It turns a measure, not to harm, but to test the edge where a human mind fractures or adapts. The jet holds. The voices stay plain. The alien records the moment their will does not lunge forward, but bends and survives. When Dylan uses the radio and refuses to describe what is real, the alien understands the species again. They hide truth to keep function. They hide function to keep status. Still, they keep flying. The alien slides ahead, offering a corridor, watching which choice they take. They turn away with control, not panic. The alien lets them go, because the goal is not capture. The goal is imprint. The alien returns on the next sortie, not as a silhouette in their forward view, but as a pressure inside the cockpit where their thoughts should be private. Dylan feels it first, a soft insistence behind his eyes, like someone leaning close to read over his shoulder. Alyssa doesn't speak. She just keeps her breathing even, as if the air itself is being graded. From the alien's side, the base is a shallow pond of noise. Radios, radars, transponders, all of it is chatter and ritual. Two humans will try to turn this into paperwork, into proof, into something they can file and forget. So the alien reaches past the plane, past the sky, into the place where the report will be born. Later, Dylan sits at a terminal in harsh fluorescent light, typing the first clean sentence he can live with. The cursor blinks. The screen flickers once, not like a glitch, like a blink from something that owns the system. A line appears by itself, centered and calm, authorized alien. Then his entire draft collapses into nothing, erased without a trace, like language has been pulled out by the roots. Dylan doesn't call it in. He doesn't joke about it. He and Alyssa just look at each other with the same thought neither of them says out loud. It can reach anywhere. That night they drive to the edge of the ramp and stand where the floodlights can't fully wash the desert away. Alyssa finally speaks, quiet, controlled. If it wanted us gone, we'd be gone. Dylan nods, but the part of him that feels watched is already learning a new rule. High above, the alien is not interested in their fear anymore. It is interested in their restraint. It tags them the way a scientist tags a specimen, not with a wound, but with access. And somewhere in the base network, a door that never existed before stays slightly open, waiting for the next time Dylan tries to explain the unexplainable. After the desert contact, the aliens stopped using spectacle. They switched to quiet pressure, the kind that makes a trained mind doubt its own instruments before it doubts the sky. They watched Dylan and Alyssa return to routine sorties, watched how both of them began checking empty air more often than their panels. The aliens did not need to appear again to be present. A slight bend in starlight at the edge of the canopy was enough. A thin, impossible straightness in the horizon line for 1 second was enough. Each time Dylan noticed, his brain reinforced the new pathway. Each time Alyssa ignored it, her brain learned fear instead. On the first night, it escalated. The craft did not enter their airspace. It sat far ahead, not visible as an object, only as a wrongness in the darkness. Dylan reacted before he understood why, rolling the jet a few degrees away. Alyssa felt it too, the sudden certainty that something was directly in front of them without being seen. The aliens measured that reaction like a pulse. Then they applied a test. All cockpit indicators remained nominal, but the outside world briefly lost continuity. For a fraction of time, the stars did not smear with motion. They held perfectly still while the jet continued forward, as if the aircraft had slipped into a frame where movement was optional. Alyssa's breath caught. Dylan's hands tightened. The aliens registered both responses and compared them, not as emotion, but as data quality. The second test was more personal. The canopy glass became a mirror for one instant, not reflecting faces, but reflecting a geometry behind the faces, a faint lattice laid over their skulls. Dylan flinched and looked away, then looked back on purpose. Alyssa looked once and refused to look again. The aliens marked the difference, not with symbols, with access. Later, on the ground, the base network did something it had never done before. A maintenance log appeared under Dylan's aircraft tail number, written in a format that matched no squadron standard. No one else could open it. For Dylan, it opened instantly and displayed a single line that did not behave like text. It felt like a thought being placed carefully into his mind. Continue. The aliens did not care whether Dylan reported it. They cared whether he obeyed the invitation without being forced. They wanted voluntary alignment, because voluntary alignment is stable. Alyssa tried to pull away from the orbit of it all. She avoided night flights, avoided the debrief rooms, avoided Dylan's eyes when he started describing shapes he could sense, but not see. The aliens noticed her retreat and adjusted the pressure around her, not to punish, to confirm the boundary. Her car radio would briefly fill with a soft tone on the drive home, the same tone every time, and she would arrive with no memory of one particular mile. She would blame stress. The aliens logged compliance by omission. Dylan, meanwhile, began to anticipate them. He would pause mid-sentence, as if listening to weather that had not reached the airfield yet. He would turn his head toward empty sky and be correct a minute later when a sensor alarm flickered and vanished. The aliens did not need to enter the hangar to be inside the system. The system itself had become their instrument. And above Nevada, they made one last demonstration, not for terror, but for ownership. A thin line of light appeared far away, high and straight, and for a moment it cast no illumination, yet Dylan could see it anyway. That was the point. The aliens were no longer trying to be seen by eyes. They were training the part of the human that sees before sight. They left the night exactly as it was. No craft, no flare, no proof. Only the new fact that Dylan and Alyssa had become different kinds of witnesses, and the aliens could now decide which kind would survive the next stage. By now, the frightening part isn't whether a UFO showed up. It's that it can leave without a trace and still rewrite Dylan and Alyssa in ways no one can measure, like a stamp pressed into the mind after the ink has dried. If they were only observing, then who was continue meant for, and what exactly comes next? Would you speak up and risk everything, or stay quiet and try to survive? The forest at night absorbs sound like a living creature. Inside the Apache Sitgreaves woods, darkness settles between the pines and presses against anything that enters its territory. On November 5th, 1975, 7 loggers finished their work as the sun dipped behind the trees. Exhausted and ready to head home, they climbed into their battered pickup truck and began the long drive down the forest road. Travis Walton, the youngest of the crew, watched the treetops pass by outside the window. He was 22, fueled by stubborn courage, the kind of youth who understood danger but believed it always belonged to someone else. Halfway down the road, the men noticed a strange light between the trees. It flickered with an intensity that did not belong to headlights, campfires, or moonlight. The driver instinctively eased off the gas. Something in that light felt wrong, almost invasive, as if it had been waiting for them. The truck rolled forward until the trees opened into a clearing. Hovering above the ground was a disc-shaped craft, perfectly curved and polished like metal dipped in sunlight. A warm amber glow pulsed along its underside, brightening and dimming as though the craft had a heartbeat. Travis felt a magnetic pull, a mixture of fear and wonder tightening in his chest. Before anyone could speak, he pushed open the door and stepped out. "Travis, stop!" Mike Rogers shouted from the driver's seat. But Travis continued walking toward the craft. The air around him vibrated gently, as though an invisible force surrounded the clearing. The craft lowered itself with a slow, deliberate movement. Travis stood directly beneath it, head tilted back, hands slightly raised. A sudden blast of blue and gold light erupted from the underside of the object. The beam struck Travis in the chest and lifted him off the ground. His body flew through the air before crashing onto the forest floor. His limbs went limp and he did not move. The men in the truck screamed. Panic struck them like a physical blow. Mike slammed his foot onto the accelerator, and the truck bounced violently over rocks and roots as they tore down the road. Their voices overlapped in terror, each of them convinced that Travis had been killed. After several minutes of frantic driving, the terror softened into guilt. They argued, shaking, until the only decision left was to return. When they reached the clearing again, both Travis and the craft had vanished. The air was still and empty, leaving no trace that anything extraordinary had occurred. Search teams and deputies flooded the area. The sheriff questioned each crew member. The story they told was outrageous, yet their fear was real. Investigators combed the woods. They found no tracks, no blood, no evidence that Travis had run away or been attacked by wildlife. On the third day of the search, the sheriff demanded that the remaining 6 loggers submit to polygraph tests. 5 passed. 1 was inconclusive due to stress, but none failed. The examiner concluded that the men believed what they had seen. The world wanted an explanation. Newspapers mocked them. Residents whispered about murder. Others claimed fame or money was their motive. But even the skeptics could not explain what happened 5 days later. Shortly after midnight, in a quiet phone booth at a gas station, a call came through. A trembling voice on the other end whispered, "It's me. They took me. Please, come get me." When Mike arrived at the station, he found Travis curled on the tile floor. His face was gaunt, his beard had grown, and his clothes hung loosely as if the week had drained him. His eyes reflected terror that words could not express. At first, Travis could remember only flashes, a blinding white light, a cold surface beneath his back, a feeling of being watched. Slowly, the fragments formed into memory. Travis woke inside a curved room made of seamless metal. A bright light hovered over his chest. He tried to move, but his limbs felt heavy and numb. 3 small figures stood beside the table. Their skin was pale and smooth like clay. Their heads were too large for their bodies, and their wide brown eyes reflected the overhead light. They had no hair, no eyebrows, no expression. Travis pushed himself upward, grabbed a cylindrical object from a nearby tray, and swung wildly. The beings did not attack. They simply stepped back and left the room without a sound. Travis stumbled down a narrow corridor and entered a larger chamber. A transparent display of stars rotated around him, forming a 3-dimensional map of space. A tall figure entered behind him. This being resembled a human far more closely than the others, with flawless skin and perfect symmetry. It wore a fitted blue uniform and a transparent helmet. Travis begged for answers, voice shaking. The figure remained silent but gestured for him to follow. In a different room, a reclining chair waited. The tall being guided him into the seat. A mask descended toward his face. Darkness swept over him. When Travis opened his eyes again, he was lying on the side of a highway. The night wind scraped against his skin. A disc floated silently overhead for a brief moment and then shot into the sky with impossible speed. Travis had returned, but something inside him had not. The world exploded with accusations. Skeptics suggested he had staged the disappearance to avoid financial penalties on his logging contract or to push a sensational story into the newspapers. Others insisted he had hidden at a friend's house for 5 days. But no skeptic could explain the sudden weight loss, the dehydration, the mental disorientation, or why 6 eyewitnesses passed lie detector tests. Hollywood turned the story into a film titled Fire in the Sky, though Travis later said the real events were far more terrifying. He described the moment he understood what frightened him most. It was not the UFO, it was not the creatures or the machinery, it was the realization that to them, he was not a person. I felt like an object, he said, something to be examined. Travis Walton never asked to become a symbol. He wanted an ordinary life in an ordinary town. But for 5 days in 1975, the universe reminded him that if something beyond us wants to take a human being, it does not need permission. The forest was silent that night, but something in the dark was listening. Can you believe this? A massive animal weighing over a ton is found dead, but at the scene, there isn't a single drop of blood left. It didn't just bleed out. 100% of the blood in its body was completely drained. Welcome to one of the greatest mysteries of modern history, cattle mutilation. This isn't science fiction. It started back in the 1970s, and believe me, it's coming back stronger than ever in 2024. So who's behind it? Aliens, the US, government, or some kind of dark spiritual force? Let's try to find the answer. A wolf or a mountain lion leaves a mess. They tear flesh, they drag the body, and they leave blood splattered across the grass. But in these cases, the scene is sterile. It is a surgical theater in the middle of a muddy pasture. The most baffling and consistent characteristic, the signature of these killings, is the blood. We are talking about full-grown bulls and cows, animals containing gallons of fluid, found completely exsanguinated. There is no pool of blood on the ground. There are no tracks leading away. In many necropsy reports, pathologists have noted that there isn't even a single blood cell left in the capillaries. To achieve this level of extraction requires industrial-grade pumps and time, equipment that simply shouldn't exist in the dark silence of a farm field. Then there are the injuries themselves, which are grotesque yet clinically precise. The attackers always target specific soft tissues. The eyes are cored out of their sockets, the ears are removed, and the tongue is sliced off deep from the throat, often pulled out through an incision in the neck that shouldn't be physically possible. Frequently, the reproductive organs are excised with clean, circular cuts. These aren't rips caused by teeth. They are smooth, microscopic incisions. Under lab analysis, the tissue often shows signs of high-heat cauterization, suggesting the use of a laser-like instrument that cuts and seals the wound simultaneously to prevent bleeding. In some of the most disturbing cases, investigators have found perfect holes drilled into the animal's jaw, extending deep into the brain case, through which the entire brain and eyeballs appear to have been suctioned out. No known animal on Earth possesses the ability to drill through bone and extract a brain without crushing the skull. We need to look at the data coming out of Australia. Reports of unexplained stock mutilations down under go all the way back to the 1950s, decades before the FBI ever opened a file in the US. This shatters the idea that this is a modern copycat phenomenon. In Australia, the victims weren't just cattle. Sheep were, and still are, primary targets. The modus operandi is identical: the surgical removal of the jaw, the missing tongue, the lack of blood. The fact that this was happening in the 1950s on a completely different continent tells us that whatever intelligence is behind this has been operating globally for nearly a century. Furthermore, if we shift our gaze to South America, the numbers are staggering and, frankly, criminally underreported by the Western press. Since the year 2000, there have been estimates of anywhere between 2,500 to 3,000 confirmed cases of animal mutilation across the continent. Argentina, Brazil, and Chile have been absolute hotspots for this activity. 3,000 cases. Let that number sink in. That is not a series of isolated pranks. That is a systematic operation. In these South American cases, the details remain hauntingly consistent with what we see in Oregon and Utah. The animals are stripped of their senses, eyes, ears, tongue, and drained of fluid. The sheer volume of cases in South America suggests that this isn't just a random sampling. It looks like a harvest. The fact that the mainstream news rarely covers the international scope of this issue makes you wonder if there's a deliberate attempt to keep the public thinking this is just a quirky American ghost story, rather than a worldwide intrusion. When you combine the Australian historical data regarding sheep, With the massive volume of South American cattle cases, the American-centric theory falls apart, leaving us with something much more vast and frightening. It implies that the entire planet is being used as a biological laboratory by an entity that views borders as irrelevant. Despite this global history, we cannot ignore the massive spike that has just occurred in the United States. Fast forward to late 2024. The silence has been broken. On December 28, 2024, reports began flooding in, specifically from the state of Oregon. We are seeing a resurgence that rivals the panic of the 1970s. Local authorities in Oregon, specifically in places like Grant County, are overwhelmed. We aren't talking about one or two cows. We are talking about hundreds of calls to police stations from different farms and ranches over the last few months. The timing is suspicious, and the intensity is escalating. One recent case involved a bull that was killed and mutilated with classic mutilation hallmarks. The owner described a scene that defied logic: a prize bull, dead, hollowed out, with no tracks leading to or from the body. What makes the 2024 wave different from the 1970s is our observational technology. Back then, it was just word of mouth. Now, we are starting to see a correlation that can no longer be dismissed: the direct presence of UFOs. Over the past 3 months, coinciding exactly with this spike in cattle deaths, there have been hundreds of sightings of unidentified flying objects over these specific farming regions. These aren't your typical silver saucers. The descriptions are consistent: bright orange orbs, sometimes black objects that glow with an orange halo, hovering silently over the livestock. One rancher provided a testimony that gives us a chilling glimpse into the high-tech nature of these encounters. He described seeing a bright orange light, about the size of a beach ball, floating just above the ground near his herd. This wasn't a drone. It made absolutely no sound. No humming, no engine noise, just dead silence. As he watched, this orb split into 2 separate objects of the same size. It defies the laws of physics. Conservation of mass doesn't work that way, yet he watched it happen. One of the orbs then shot off toward the north, accelerating from 0 to thousands of miles per hour in a split second, vanishing instantly. Minutes later, he checked his herd and found his steer mutilated. When you combine the eyewitness accounts of these silent, splitting orbs with the surgical precision found on the animals, the conclusion becomes very difficult to avoid. This technology is not from a local coyote pack, and it certainly doesn't look like standard human aircraft. This brings us to the inevitable question: who is doing this? The theories generally fall into 3 camps. The first, and the one that seems to fit the physical evidence best, is the extraterrestrial hypothesis. The correlation between the orange orbs and the dead cattle is too strong to ignore. The theory posits that these beings are conducting biological monitoring. Why the soft tissues? Why the eyes and tongues? Scientists speculate that these are the areas where genetic material and environmental toxins are most concentrated. If you were an alien species monitoring the health of this planet, cows are the perfect biological bellwether. They are everywhere. They eat the grass. They are part of the human food supply. The complete draining of blood could be for the manufacturing of a nutrient or fuel we don't understand. The technology displayed, including silent propulsion, laser cutters, and the ability to lift 2-ton animals without tracks, points to a capability far beyond current human science. However, we cannot rule out the second theory, the government or military-industrial complex. This theory suggests we are being deceived by our own leaders. Proponents argue that the aliens are a cover story to mask illegal testing of biological weapons. Could these mutilations be a way of tracking prions like mad cow disease or testing new nerve agents? The argument is that if the government were doing this, they would want you to blame Martians. It's the perfect camouflage. If a rancher says the government killed my cow, people listen. If he says a UFO killed my cow, he gets laughed at. It's a convenient way to discredit witnesses. Then there is the third angle, the occult and spiritual theory. In the 70s, newspapers blamed devil worshippers. While cultists usually leave a mess, the spiritual angle has persisted. Many view these entities not as space travelers, but as interdimensional beings, what the Bible might call fallen angels or demons. They point to the cruelty and the mockery of nature involved in these mutilations as inherently evil. They argue that these entities are harvesting energy or fear, and that the increase in activity in 2024 is a precursor to a major spiritual event or the rise of the Antichrist. Cultural products like the video game Grey Hill Incident are starting to reflect this trauma, allowing players to experience the terror of a ranch invasion. But for the farmers in Oregon, this is no game. After analyzing the bloodless corpses, the surgical precision, and the global history from Australian sheep to South American cattle, one nagging question remains. While this is a global phenomenon, why does the sheer intensity of the high strangeness seem to concentrate so heavily on the United States during specific windows of time? Why Oregon? Why now? Is there something specific about the geography of the American West? Or is the United States simply the primary stage for a contact event that is slowly escalating? It feels like a message is being sent. When you leave a mutilated cow out in a field, unable to be eaten by nature, stripped of its eyes and blood, you are leaving a billboard. You are saying, "We can do this and you cannot stop us." The rise in cases in late 2024 suggests that whatever this program is, it is accelerating. The quiet years might be over. As we move further into this decade, we might be approaching a disclosure event not by government admission, but by the undeniable volume of evidence piling up in our pastures. So what do you think? Are the 3,000 cases in South America proof of an alien harvest? Is the Australian history proof of a century-long experiment? Or is this a government psychological operation? The evidence is there for anyone brave enough to look. If you live in these rural areas, keep your eyes on the sky. And if you see those orange lights, lock your doors. Because whatever is out there, it's hungry, it's precise, and it is not asking for permission. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the dark corners of our reality and want to stay updated on the weirdest phenomena happening around the globe, from the paranormal to the unexplained, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. Drop a like if you want to see more investigations like this. Until next time, keep asking questions, stay safe, and watch the skies. In the quiet, rural corners of America, an untold horror unfolds under the veil of night. It's a recurring nightmare that has haunted farmers for over 50 years, a mystery where the victims are livestock and the perpetrator defies human logic. This is not the work of wolves or coyotes. This is calculated, precise, and utterly bloodless. They call them cattle mutilations. For decades, investigators have been chasing ghosts, yet the evidence points increasingly toward a non-terrestrial solution. Tonight, we peel back the layers of this gruesome enigma, from the unnerving surgical precision to the alarming forensic evidence that suggests we are dealing with a technology far beyond our own, exploring the terrifying possibility that these mutilations are not random acts of cruelty, but part of a global, non-hostile alien agenda. The typical mutilation scene is a study in contradictions. A lifeless animal, often a cow, found intact, yet vital organs have been expertly removed. The cases cluster in areas known for high UFO activity, like the vast San Luis Valley in Colorado. Ranchers like Mike Duran, who discovered one of his cows with the udders and female genitalia cleanly removed, consistently testify that the acts are unlike any natural predator kill. The most chilling aspects of these scenes are universal. Organs like the genitals, eyes, tongues, and ears are surgically removed with uncanny finesse. The animal's blood is entirely drained, yet there is no blood at the crime scene. Crucially, there is a complete absence of evidence. No human footprints, no tire tracks, no signs of struggle, implying the animals were never even on the ground during the procedure. The cuts themselves are the most damning clue. Duran described them as not being made by a knife, but looking like they were cut and cauterized at the same time, clean, like a laser. The sophistication of these cuts is what first broke the earthly paradigm. They are performed with such cellular precision that tissues immediately adjacent to the cut line show no trauma whatsoever, a feat impossible with current human surgical tools, which always leave microscopic cell tearing. This technological signature, coupled with the mysterious nature of the attack, often leads the ranchers themselves to an extraterrestrial conclusion. As Duran stated, upon seeing the scene, his first thought was, "They're back." This initial visceral reaction of the witnesses strongly suggests that the level of precision and the manner of the operation are entirely foreign to our world, hinting at a non-human operative utilizing methods we can only dream of. The mystery transitioned from folklore to forensic science, with the work of individuals like Philip Hoyle, former director of the Animal Pathology Research Unit in the UK. Hoyle spent years investigating these cases, and his findings are arguably the most compelling link to an extraterrestrial hypothesis. He stressed that when examining the wounds under a microscope, one realizes they are not looking at a mere knife wound. Some of the tissue appeared to be unzipped, implying a molecular-level disintegration rather than a cut. The cuts were clean, precise, clinical, and perfectly aligned. He unequivocally stated that the technology used is frankly terrifying and clearly, absolutely clearly, more advanced than anything we currently possess on Earth, suggesting a civilization thousands of years ahead of us. The most shocking evidence came from a substance often found at the wound site, a black, putty-like paste. Analysis revealed this to be degraded hemoglobin, but with a crucial distinction. The red and white corpuscles had been separated using a centrifuge. Hoyle emphasized that this sophisticated process can only be done in a high-tech, controlled laboratory setting. The fact that this specific forensic signature is found on a cow carcass in a remote field utterly invalidates any theory involving earthbound predators or cultists. This finding points directly to a high-level, technologically advanced scientific operation, a kind of biosignature left by the craft's internal environment or procedures. Based on the combination of the sterile cuts and the lack of ground evidence, Hoyle developed a chilling theory about the perpetrator's method of operation. He hypothesized that the entities are using transference beams, essentially anti-gravity beams, to silently levitate the animal off the ground and on board the craft where the surgical procedure is done, before placing it back down. This zero-friction transport system is deemed the only rational explanation for the complete lack of evidence or disturbance surrounding the animal when it is discovered. This hypothesis is further corroborated by hundreds of farmer testimonies reporting strange phenomena coinciding with the mutilations. Bright spheres of light, orbs, and UFOs operating in non-traditional, non-aerodynamic flight patterns, exhibiting speeds and instantaneous directional changes unlike any known human aircraft or helicopter. These sightings are often described as silent, hovering craft operating with a purposeful, stealthy efficiency. If the evidence points to superior technology, the question then becomes why. Hoyle believes the objective is not malevolent, but rather a global surveillance program. He suggests that various alien intelligences have a vested interest in planet Earth and humanity, and they are systematically sampling the environment by removing specific, regenerative tissues and glands from livestock on a global scale. Their primary goal is to monitor the food chain and the environment by collecting genetic materials and tissues, which are then transported off-world for their ultimate purpose, perhaps to monitor the effects of our pollution or disease on Earth's delicate biological systems. Hoyle argues that these entities are not hostile. They genuinely care about our welfare. He views their actions as a meticulous global stewardship of the biosphere, operating in secret to prevent mass panic, because revealing the full extent of this intervention would undoubtedly cause societal collapse. The most curious element of the cattle mutilation phenomenon is not the technology, but its apparent decline in recent years. While high-profile, undeniable cases still surface sporadically, the sheer volume and geographical concentration seen in the 1970s and 1980s have largely diminished. If these acts were the result of a global, systematic extraterrestrial program, why the sudden lull? One major hypothesis within the UFO and mutilation research community, and one that aligns with Philip Hoyle's theory, is that the sampling mission has largely been completed. If the objective was to gather sufficient genetic and tissue samples from the global food chain to establish a baseline of planetary health and monitor the effects of human environmental impact, pollution, pesticides, disease, then the entities may have simply collected enough data. The operation moved from a high-volume data collection phase to a low-volume maintenance or monitoring phase. Essentially, once the initial biological census was complete, the need for dozens of mutilations per year vanished. Furthermore, the decrease might reflect a shift in the alleged alien agenda. If the animal sampling was preparatory to the human breeding program detailed by David Jacobs, perhaps the resources and focus have been redirected entirely. Once the necessary environmental data was correlated with the accelerating human hybridization program, the entities may have pivoted their surveillance efforts away from the fields and more directly towards human abductions and the quiet integration of hybrids into society. The animals provided the necessary biological context. The humans now provide the necessary genetic material and host environment. Therefore, the recent decline in cattle mutilations may not be evidence that the phenomenon was fake, but rather chilling proof that the entities involved are efficient, goal-oriented, and highly successful. They accomplished their mission, gathered their required materials, and have now moved silently onto the next, perhaps far more invasive phase of their complex operation on Earth. The lack of new evidence doesn't signify peace. It might simply mean the surveillance has become so sophisticated and so targeted that we are no longer equipped to detect it. The evidence is complex, frightening, and undeniable. Now we turn the question to you. Do you believe the mutilations are proof of an ongoing alien agenda, or is there a terrestrial explanation we haven't uncovered? Let us know your theories in the comments below. Your speculation and analysis fuel the search for truth. If you found this investigation compelling, please hit the like button, share this video with fellow truth seekers, and most importantly, subscribe so you don't miss our next deep dive into the unexplained. Don't let the mystery go unsolved. Welcome to the Deep Archives. For decades, the public narrative of alien encounters has been dominated by the gray entity, small, frail, and clinical. But what happens when the grays are simply the staff, and the true power rests with a commanding presence operating from a hidden royal court? This is the story of Filiberto Cardenas, a Cuban immigrant in Miami, 1979, whose experience didn't just document an abduction, it exposed a rigid, terrifying hierarchy operating beneath our world. The late 1970s in South Florida were volatile, a blend of Cold War paranoia and a cultural explosion of the burgeoning UFO phenomenon. Cardenas's case, however, transcended the sensationalism of the era. It became a cornerstone of ufology due to an unprecedented combination of evidence: multiple external eyewitnesses to the event, 108 quantifiable physical marks left on the victim's body, and the subsequent, highly consistent testimony under repeated hypnotic regression. This wasn't hearsay. This was an investigation with tangible evidence, classified as a close encounter of the fourth kind, CE4K. Tonight, we detail the evidence that proves the existence of the chief. The date was late January 1979. Filiberto Cardenas was driving with 3 friends on a remote road outside Hialeah near the Everglades. The atmosphere was calm until 1:45 a.m. when, without warning, the vehicle died instantly. This classic electromagnetic effect, EMF signature, where an advanced energy source neutralizes ground-based electronics, was the first red flag. Their quartz wristwatch, a simple timing device, also ceased function simultaneously, a deliberate surgical act of isolation. As panic set in, a massive, silent, disc-shaped craft descended slowly nearby. Its sheer size was immense, casting a disproportionately eerie glow on the secluded garden where the car was immobilized. According to the friends, Cardenas, standing outside the car, was struck by an unseen, powerful force field. He was rendered instantly catatonic and paralyzed, a physiological shutdown preventing resistance. Before the horrified eyes of his 3 companions, Filiberto was levitated, slowly and silently lifted, into the belly of the immense, hovering ship. The 3 friends, terrified and unable to start the car, fled the scene on foot. Their subsequent consistent testimony became a critical initial piece of corroboration for investigators. Crucially, this event was not isolated. Reports later verified that air traffic control (ATC) personnel at a nearby airport detected an unidentified flying object exhibiting extreme velocity and unusual maneuvers in the vicinity at the exact time Cardenas vanished. This official, multiple-source confirmation elevated the Cardenas case from a simple abduction claim to a documented investigation supported by external observational data. Inside the craft, the terrifying medical procedure began. Filiberto recalled being in a large, cold, brightly lit room staffed by the classic gray entities. They were short, approximately 4 feet tall, with large black, almond-shaped eyes and smooth, grayish skin. He described them as emotionless technicians, utilizing strange small tools to perform a comprehensive, intrusive physical examination. The most damning and unique piece of physical evidence was what Cardenas carried back: 108 small, perfectly circular marks etched across his body. These were documented by investigators, notably on his upper chest, back, and limbs. These were not scars. They were fresh, meticulously placed pinpoint punctures or microburns. The exact count, 108, is highly suggestive of a calculated, methodical process, potentially a diagnostic tally, biosampling array, or, most chillingly, the installation points for an advanced neuromonitoring device. Cardenas returned bearing a quantified physical receipt of the encounter, separating his account from almost every other abduction narrative in history. The medical examination was only the preliminary step. Cardenas was next transported to a massive, complex facility. He described being moved to a cavernous area, an immense underground or undersea base, a highly technological chamber that felt like an artificial cave or deep-sea habitat. This detail immediately links the Cardenas file to theories of non-interplanetary but subterranean or hollow Earth operations. Here, he encountered the entity that revealed the true structure of the operation: the Chief. This being was dramatically different from the Greys, tall, standing between 6 and 7 feet, majestic and uniquely intimidating. He wore a long, flowing, dark yellow or gold cape and sat upon a large, ornate throne. He was the master, the obvious figure of authority in this terrifying royal court. The biggest revelation was the communication. The Chief spoke not only telepathically but verbally, in perfect, flowing Spanish. This suggests either an ancient integration into human culture or the ability to instantaneously synthesize complex language, a profound technological capability that eliminates the need for telepathic ambiguity. The Chief delivered a solemn and direct warning. Humanity was on a definitive path to self-destruction, primarily through environmental ruin and endless warfare. He stated that the alien program was a genetic preservation effort. They were meticulously collecting and studying human samples to ensure the continuation of the species should Earth fail to sustain itself. This confirmed Cardenas's terrifying realization. His abduction was part of a planetary-scale intervention, not a random scouting mission. Before Cardenas was returned, the Chief presented him with a concrete piece of evidence: a small, heavy metallic ring inscribed with alien symbols. The object became the most coveted piece of hard evidence. Investigators attempted to analyze the material, looking for isotopic anomalies or unidentifiable elements. While laboratory results were often inconclusive, a common outcome for alleged alien artifacts, the unique, non-terrestrial symbols inscribed upon it cemented its role as the Chief's definitive, physical stamp on the encounter. It wasn't just a gift, it was a psychological anchor, a constant reminder of his ownership and the secrets he carried. The ordeal continued. Weeks after his return, Filiberto received a powerful telepathic summons. They wanted him back, and this time he was instructed to bring his wife, Margarita Cardenas. The second abduction, which included Margarita, provided the final, powerful piece of corroboration. The investigation was led by respected ufologist Virgilio Sanchez Osejo. Recognizing the limitations of conscious recall in traumatic events, both Filiberto and Margarita underwent multiple, separate sessions of hypnotic regression with different specialists. The results were astonishing. Under deep hypnosis, both Filiberto and Margarita recounted their experiences: the paralysis, the Greys, the Chief, the subterranean base, and the medical procedures, with unwavering consistency across all sessions and all practitioners. This includes the consistent description of the Chief's appearance, the golden throne, and the purpose of the genetic program. While skeptics often cite regression therapy as prone to confabulation, creating false memories through suggestion, the dense, complex, and harmonious overlap of details between the two independent witnesses convinced many professional researchers that they were dealing with genuine, suppressed memories of a shared, traumatic reality. The Cardenas file is a masterclass in organized terror. It forces a fundamental shift in ufology. The small, silent grays are merely the technicians and the workforce. The true command rests with the tall, regal chief on the golden throne, an entity with the authority to grant physical evidence and deliver planetary mandates. This implies a chilling multi-species hierarchy where the Greys serve as the expendable pawns in a far grander scheme of information gathering and genetic intervention. The most disturbing implication is the subterranean agenda. If the Chief is operating not from a distant galaxy like Zeta Reticuli, but from a vast, high-tech network beneath the Florida Straits, then the threat is not millions of light years away. It is integrated into the very fabric of our planet. This supports the terrifying hypothesis that these entities are not casual space visitors, but ancient Earth inhabitants, or highly integrated operatives who have been here hidden all along. The convergence of evidence, the 108 physical marks, the unusual metallic ring, and the consistent testimonies, is not merely proof of an encounter. It is a signature of alien ownership. The Cardenas family was branded and monitored. Their legacy is a reminder that the phenomenon of alien abduction is not just about lights in the sky. It's about a methodical, intelligent, and ongoing interaction with humanity, dictated by the powerful masters on the hidden thrones. What do you believe the 108 marks represent? Was it a biological diagnostic receipt, or a piece of tracking technology installed by the Chief? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below, and tell us which level of the alien hierarchy you fear the most. Imagine a job where silence isn't comforting, it's crushing, where the air feels so heavy it presses against your eardrums. You stand completely alone across endless miles of empty space, with nothing but the wind whining through metal cables and the faint cloud of your own breath hanging in the cold in front of your face. Today, we're stepping straight into the heart of that silence, into the hidden secrets of the Copper Ridge Resort. The Copper Ridge Resort, perched high in the Colorado Rockies at 11,000 feet, was a study in isolated cold. This was the domain of the graveyard shift, and for 6 years, Callum Rafferty, a 52-year-old lift operator with a reputation for routine, had been its sole guardian. It was February 16th. At 12:05 a.m., Callum secured himself into the maintenance cabin for his methodical 40-minute inspection round. His job was simple: check the cables, pylons, and the dozens of empty passenger cabins hanging motionless on the line. The silence was absolute, broken only by the auxiliary motor's hum and the metallic clack of the wheels. Up here, he felt closer to the blinding stars above than to the world below. Callum was approaching the third pylon, Pylon 3, when the rhythm broke. His headlamp swept across the suspended passenger cabins ahead. His eyes immediately locked onto a visual impossibility. Above cabin 18, a soft, brilliant, white-blue light was hovering, silent, stationary, and approximately 30 feet above the empty car. It was unlike any resort or aircraft system. The phenomenon was not singular. There were 3 more identical lights, one above cabin 22, another over cabin 25, and a 4th positioned precisely over cabin 29. 4 isolated passenger cabins, each marked by a silent sphere of energy. He pulled out his radio, his heart beginning a heavy thud. "Marcus, this is Callum. 4 distinct lights, high intensity, above the line near Pylon 3. Check thermal or CCTV." Marcus, the night security guard at the base, reported, "Negative, Callum. All feeds are green. Clear night." Callum's cabin was now nearly adjacent to cabin 18, the car. Inside the glass, a heavy, opaque layer of thick white frost covered the interior of the windows. Inside, it was an impossible anomaly. The cabin was sealed. This internal flash freeze defied logic. He sped up, moving to cabin 22. The light and the internal frost were identical. "Marcus, get Ava on the line. This is beyond thermal. The inside of these cabins, they're covered in frost, like a rapid internal flash freeze." Ava Riker, the head of security, confirmed Marcus's report. Nothing on the cameras. She suggested reflection or a trick of the light. Callum rejected it. Ava, this is Pylon 3 at 11,000 feet. What is freezing the inside of the glass? He reached Pylon 2 and looked back. His breath hitched in his throat. They were gone. The 4 white-blue lights were extinguished, vanished. The cabins themselves appeared perfectly normal. The bizarre internal frost had disappeared without a trace. The entire phenomenon had been wiped clean in the span of perhaps 90 seconds. Ova, he radioed, his voice tight. Scratch that. The lights are gone, and the cabins are clear. They just dissolved. Ava told him to finish his inspection and log the disturbance. Callum knew his eyes had not deceived him. The disturbance was real, even if the recording devices failed to capture it. Callum reached the summit station, his mind still reeling from the Pylon 3 event. He stepped out onto the steel deck, exposed to the raw mountain night, and saw the second, overwhelming anomaly. Floating 100 feet off the ground silently was an object of enormous size. It was long and cylindrical, perfectly cigar-shaped, at least 40 feet in length. It glowed with the same intense white-blue light as the spheres, but this light was subdued, a deep, self-contained pulse that seemed to absorb sound. The wind was completely dead. The quiet was absolute, a pressure vacuum that made his ears pop. Callum stood frozen, feeling an overriding sense of absolute, clinical inspection. The massive, silent craft simply hovered, dominating the atmosphere. He knew he was being studied, observed, and categorized, a single insect beneath a microscope. Then, with an impossible acceleration that defied physics, the cigar-shaped object did not move so much as it vanished. It became a single, brief streak of white-blue light, an arc of energy that shot vertically into the star-packed sky and was gone. Shaking, Callum radioed Ava and began the descent. He checked the time, 1:12 a.m. The ride should have taken 40 minutes. Halfway down, the magnitude of the event struck him. Every single passenger cabin, all 42 of them, were now uniformly covered in the same thick internal frost he had seen earlier. A silent, frozen fleet gliding down the mountain. He radioed Marcus. You need to be at the base station. All 42 cabins are frosted inside. He accelerated the cabin, needing to get off the mountain. He pulled into the dock at 1:47 a.m. Marcus was waiting. Callum, what took you so long? You were due back at 1:12 a.m. The system logged a downtime anomaly of 35 minutes. Callum stared, bewildered. The motor log confirmed it, stationary from 1:12 a.m. to 1:47 a.m. 35 minutes had vanished from his life. He pointed to the approaching cabins. Marcus, look at the frost inside. Marcus squinted. They're empty. Call. Just normal frost on the outside. Callum turned back to the closest car. The thick, impossible internal frost that had covered the entire fleet moments ago was gone. The slate was wiped clean. Callum was the only witness. In those 35 missing minutes, the watchers had sampled every passenger cabin, collecting a massive atmospheric sample, and meticulously erased all evidence just before his arrival. Callum and Ava Riker eventually shared their combined data. Ava, deeply disturbed by the systematic failure of the CCTV and the inexplicable time loss, had a rare moment of professional vulnerability, admitting that something outside the known resort operations had occurred. She privately noted a brief, unexplained white-blue flash in one of the high-altitude cameras, too quick and too distorted to classify, but enough to unsettle her. A week later, the encounter escalated. Callum was again on the gondola when the cabin motor abruptly failed, a non-standard malfunction. Then the cabin felt a distinct, powerful shift. It was lifted clean off the gondola cable by an unseen force. Panic finally set in. He watched the mountain drop away beneath him as his cabin was gently transported toward the summit. Then the world dissolved into a bright light, and when his vision cleared, he was no longer in the cabin. He was inside a vast, silent structure, the cigar-shaped craft he had seen, perhaps, or a chamber within it. The chamber was lit by the same gentle white-blue pulse. In the center of the room stood an entity. It was about 5 feet tall, with smooth, pale gray-white skin and a disproportionately large head. Its eyes were massive, black and almond-shaped, utterly devoid of any recognizable emotion, yet communicating a sense of profound age and intelligence. This was not a monster. It was a pure intellect. The entity raised a 3-fingered hand and touched Callum's temple. Instantly, knowledge flooded his mind. a rapid, non-verbal stream of pure understanding. He realized the four lights were observation drones for rapid molecular sampling. The internal frost was the collection mechanism, freezing trace data from every single human who had ridden the lift that day. This was a massive population sample, gathered and meticulously wiped clean during the 35 minutes of lost time. The beings were watchers, observers, and students of humanity, patiently observing a species evolving. Most profoundly, he grasped nonlinear time perception. The missing time wasn't stolen. His consciousness had momentarily slipped free of human linear reality. For the watchers, time was fluid, elastic, and abundant. He was returned to his cabin with a silent jolt, leaving him only with a small, circular scar on his forearm, the physical cost of seeing. Callum Rafferty and Ava Riker were changed. They knew the mountains of Colorado were a vast, high-altitude laboratory, and they had been observed. They learned to live with the truth. The Watchers are ancient, patient, and exist in a state of non-linear time, simply observing a species on the cusp of evolution. The truth is more unsettling than simple abduction. The mountains are watching, and humanity is being patiently observed, learning to swim through time instead of drown in it. Pay attention to your clocks. Notice when your moments feel elastic. These are signs that your consciousness is transitioning. If you've made it this far, thank you for watching. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss our next deep dive into the unexplained. Leave a comment below. What is your theory on nonlinear time, and where are you watching from tonight? Let's discuss. More than 80% of Earth's oceans remain completely unexplored. Scientists say we know more about the surface of Mars than we know about our own seafloor. So if something has been watching us from below, we wouldn't even know it. Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, FWC officer Travis McCall had spent nearly a decade patrolling the marine environment off Florida's southwest coast. He knew the Gulf of Mexico intimately, its rhythms, its temperaments, and its particular kind of profound, enveloping darkness on a moonless night. But the night of October 12, 2023, felt different. McCall and his partner, Officer Jenna Ruiz, were running a routine patrol route roughly 15 miles west of Naples. A late-season tropical system was brewing, yet the sea lay in a humid, unnerving calm. The air itself seemed heavy, magnifying every minor sound. At approximately 10:30 p.m., the stillness broke. McCall's attention was drawn skyward by 3 points of intense white light, descending with perfect geometric spacing and unnerving silence. They were too disciplined for meteors and lacked the telltale navigation lights and noise of helicopters or conventional aircraft. Initially, McCall rationalized them as highly advanced, military-grade drones, a notion that offered temporary comfort against the growing unease. These lights were contained within shapes that seemed almost impossible to focus on, non-reflective, non-geometric forms that defied sharp definition, lending them an ethereal quality. The objects continued their descent, passing the point where any known aerial vehicle should have stabilized or decelerated. Without disturbing the surface with so much as a ripple, the three lights slipped silently into the black water. For a brief, terrifying 10 seconds, they were visible, glowing intensely beneath the surface before the ocean swallowed them whole. The silence that followed was broken only by the churning anxiety in McCall's chest. He immediately reached for the radio to report a possible aircraft down, but his marine radio, typically reliable, was useless. Ruiz's cell phone yielded nothing but static. All standard communication links were inexplicably dead. McCall instinctively checked the boat's fish finder, expecting nothing, but the sonar screen painted a vivid, impossible reality. 3 massive, solid contacts registered below, plummeting past 500 feet, then 700 feet, until they reached a depth of 900 feet. The objects paused, holding a perfect 200-yard triangular formation, a deliberate pattern of intelligent movement. Then, with terrifying velocity, they began their ascent directly toward the patrol boat. The increasing sonar ping was accompanied by a deep, powerful hum, a resonant frequency that didn't just rattle the boat's hull, but vibrated through McCall's bones. Every electronic device on the vessel, from the GPS and radar to the engine's instruments, flickered and died, plunging them into utter darkness save for the emergency spotlight. 50 yards away, the three contacts breached the surface. They were not submerged vehicles. They were spheres of pure, pulsing, incandescent white light, each approximately 10 feet in diameter, defying gravity as they hovered silently, entirely weightlessly, just above the black waves. Their light was penetrating, illuminating the water and the faces of the two terrified officers. As one of the spheres began to slowly circle the patrol boat, McCall and Ruiz experienced an intense mental pressure. It was not sound, but a direct, intrusive sense of intelligent presence. The spheres pulsed 3 times, and a collective, unified thought was impressed directly into their minds, devoid of language but rich with meaning and emotion. We see you. We acknowledge you. We mean no harm. We have been here long. We watch. We study. We wait. McCall, fighting paralyzing fear, somehow managed to project a coherent question. What are you waiting for? The response was immediate and chilling. Changes. The waters change. The earth changes. We document. We preserve. This is the last cycle. The message suggested an ancient, eternal vigil over planetary epochs. After one final, overwhelming pulse, the spheres simply ceased to exist. They did not fly away or sink. They just vanished, leaving only the afterimage in the officers' eyes and the renewed, sudden, deafening sound of the boat's electronics springing back to life. Shaken to their core, McCall convinced a reeling Ruiz that reporting the incident truthfully would destroy their careers. They agreed to file a generic report citing equipment malfunction. However, upon docking, they encountered fellow FWC officer Marcus Holbrook, who looked pale and bewildered. Holbrook, patrolling near Captiva, had witnessed the identical descent, the electronic shutdown, and the delivery of the exact same chilling mental message. He revealed he was the 4th officer known to have reported such a sighting that night. It was an orchestrated, widespread disclosure event that had failed to stay secret only because of the sheer number of witnesses. The following morning, the 4 officers, McCall, Ruiz, Holbrook, and Lisa Cortez, the other witness, were summoned to a discreet meeting. Present were Agent Reeves from the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, and a mysterious elderly man identified only as Dr. Elias. Reeves confirmed they were not dealing with conventional UAVs or even standard UFOs, but unidentified submerged objects, USOs, and that sightings had surged along the Florida coast for 6 months. Dr. Elias, a veteran of decades spent tracking these anomalies, delivered the grim truth. The entities were appearing openly because they were running out of time. They believed humanity needed to know. The USOs were not invaders. They were observers, archivists, and now desperate heralds of an accelerated, inevitable environmental catastrophe, primarily driven by oceanic warming and instability. The observers were preparing for the coming global shift and warning the dominant species to do the same. The officers were pressured into maintaining absolute confidentiality for a 2-week period, while intelligence services tried to control the narrative. During this time, the 4 officers quietly documented the signs of the entity's warnings coming true: localized mass dolphin beachings, unexplained fish kills, and rapidly forming, unprecedented red tides, all indicators of a marine environment reacting violently to an unseen internal crisis. The fragile period of secrecy shattered 16 days after the initial encounter. On October 28th, McCall and Ruiz were on patrol when the true scale of the phenomenon was unveiled. They watched, this time with a camera running, as not just 3, but dozens, then hundreds of the glowing spheres descended from the sky. They spanned the entire visible coastline, from the northern tip of Marco Island all the way to Naples Beach, performing an undeniable, choreographed aerial display. This time, the event was explicitly public. Thousands of people on shore, in condominiums, and on pleasure craft witnessed the unbelievable sight. The spheres rose together from the dark water, illuminating the night sky with a single brilliant flash. Then, the collective, nonverbal message flooded the consciousness of every witness. Time grows short. The change accelerates. You must prepare. The water rises. The earth shifts. We can only watch. We can only warn. Survival is your choice. McCall and Ruiz, understanding the futility and danger of silence, did not hesitate. They realized the truth was more important than their careers or the government's attempts at control. They immediately recorded and uploaded their video statements, detailing every sight, sound, and telepathic warning they had received since October 12th. Within hours, the videos went massively viral, corroborated by countless phone videos and eyewitness accounts of the mass sighting. The truth that humanity was not alone, and that these hidden entities were warning them about impending, accelerated, planet-wide disaster was irrevocably public. 6 months later, the spheres appear regularly in coastal regions across the globe. McCall, who now works with Ruiz as part of an international task force, confirms that the environmental data validates the USO's warning. The planetary changes are accelerating faster than any model had predicted. The lights in the Gulf are no longer an anomaly to be covered up, but a stark, undeniable warning and a strange promise that humanity was given a fighting chance to adapt and survive. Looking back, Travis McCall often reflects on that initial terror. The fear has been replaced by a grim determination. The USOs never promised salvation. They only provided a clock and a survival manual written in the language of pure urgency. The biggest challenge isn't believing they exist. It's convincing humanity to fundamentally change its behavior before the rising tides and shifting Earth render change impossible. McCall and Ruiz, alongside Dr. Elias and others, continue their work, watching the water and waiting for the next sign. They are no longer FWC officers in the traditional sense, but frontline observers in humanity's largest environmental and existential crisis. The darkness of the Gulf is now forever changed, no longer a void of the unknown, but a place of profound, intelligent surveillance. The battle for survival has just begun. What do you think we should do next to prepare for the change? Join the conversation, share your theories, and subscribe to Alien X Base for weekly updates on USO sightings and climate acceleration data. Grant McCarthy thought he understood the Alaskan sky. Then the aurora stopped behaving like the aurora. A pale band froze rigid in midair, and inside it a perfect white line appeared, thin, steady, and too precise to be natural. In the same moment, the Twin Otter's radios fell into absolute silence. Digital systems began lying, and the shape in the sky started moving as if it could read the aircraft. This is not a story about chasing UFOs. It is about a repeating pattern that interacts with an aircraft like a controlled experiment. Communications cut out without static. Digital avionics drift into absurd errors, while analog instruments remain steady. A geometric form appears inside the aurora, rotates with mechanical smoothness, and then begins to match the plane's movement with unnerving precision. Grant McCarthy, 41, was trained to trust procedure, instruments, and weather models. His co-pilot, Renee Voss, carried the same discipline. Their route from Fairbanks to Barrow was familiar, remote, and usually uneventful. What happened on 2 separate flights suggested something else lived in that corridor, something capable of touching a machine in midair and leaving physical proof behind. Early February, the Twin Otter lifted from Fairbanks and flew north without issue for hours. Then the aurora formed ahead and stopped behaving like the aurora. A long east-west band of light froze rigid in mid-motion. Inside that frozen curtain, a single white line appeared, razor straight, pencil thin, bright enough to force a squint. It held perfectly still, too precise to feel natural. The cockpit failed in a way that felt selective. Radios dropped into absolute silence, primary and backup, with no static. GPS flickered and began reporting impossible jumps, altitude numbers spiking and collapsing while analog dials stayed calm. Ahead, the white line rotated with mechanical smoothness, tilted slightly, corrected, then appeared closer in sudden steps, as if its distance updated between blinks. It split into 3 identical lines and arranged into a perfect triangle, point up, centered in the forward view. When Grant altered heading, the triangle rotated to stay aligned with the nose. When he adjusted altitude, it matched the change with exact timing. It was tracking. A harsh burst of static snapped through the headset, and a monotone male voice issued a directive to maintain heading and not deviate. The triangle flared once in intense white and vanished. The aurora resumed normal motion. Radios returned, GPS stabilized, Yet the aircraft recorded a communications loss the ground logs did not acknowledge. After landing at Barrow, the proof was on the airframe. Thick frost coated both wings, far heavier than expected, and a faint scorched discoloration marked the nose, which stayed warm long after shutdown. The official inspection found no shorts, no clear damage, no mechanical explanation. On paper, it became an unexplained malfunction with possible aurora interference. In the cockpit, it remained something else. Grant could not ignore how selective it had been. Radio silence without noise, digital lies without analog failure, geometry that behaved like a guided instrument rather than atmospheric light. In early March, Grant and Renee flew the same corridor again with no passengers. A single white point appeared ahead, then blinked out. The radio cracked once, and the same monotone voice returned, issuing a calm directive that tried to steer them by command rather than by control tower procedure. The temperature in the cockpit dropped rapidly. Frost crept along the windshield edges. GPS flickered. The white point returned as a line, then divided into three, forming the triangle again as the aurora seemed to fade away behind it. The triangle held its position relative to the aircraft like a lock-on symbol, matching heading and altitude changes with exact timing. Then the aircraft's behavior shifted from abnormal to impossible. It dipped hard, then surged into a steep climb driven by full power without pilot input. The yoke locked. At 14,200 feet, the climb stopped instantly, and the aircraft held as if pinned in place, engines settling into idle without the expected fall. The triangle moved closer, and the pilots realized it was not the object. It was an outline, edges of something larger, dark, massive, silent, filling the forward view and erasing depth. Control returned violently during a sudden drop. At lower altitude, the aircraft stabilized and the dark mass disappeared. After landing, the physical marks were clearer. Frost again clung to wings. The nose discoloration remained. Beneath the fuselage, 3 parallel burn lines were scored into the paint, evenly spaced, precise as measurement marks. This time, the response did not stay inside rumor and logbooks. FAA investigator Patricia Keller confirmed the physical evidence aligned with the crew's timeline. The scorch patterns suggested thermal exposure rather than scraping, chemicals, or maintenance error. The burn lines under the belly were too uniform to be random damage, and the paint showed signs of heat applied in narrow bands. The frost samples showed unusual crystalline structure, closer to conditions the aircraft had not actually flown through. Even the heat on the nose after shutdown behaved wrong, lingering like the metal had absorbed energy and refused to give it back. What made it worse was the system-like behavior. The failures were selective, almost surgical. Radios went silent without the messy signature of interference. Digital systems became unreliable in clusters, while the analog instruments stayed stable enough to keep the crew alive. The geometry appeared inside the aurora, then acted like a tracking tool, rotating to remain aligned with the aircraft's nose and copying altitude changes as if it was reading a live stream of the plane's state. That suggested intent, or at least a process that responded to control inputs. Grant began searching for precedent. He found a declassified military report from the 1980s describing a strikingly similar event over the North Slope. Communications loss without conventional noise, navigation anomalies, and heat-related discoloration on aircraft surfaces. Different decade, different crew, same region, same fingerprint. The corridor was not producing a new anomaly. It was repeating an old one. That changed how the story felt. It was no longer a strange night with a strange light. It became a long-running pattern embedded in that airspace. A phenomenon that could reach into a cockpit systems, reduce a modern aircraft to partial blindness, then present a geometric form that behaved with the calm precision of machinery. It did not need to chase the plane. It only needed to establish rules, force compliance, and then release control once the demonstration was complete. The official conclusion remained conservative. Unknown aerial phenomenon, possible environmental influence, unexplained equipment malfunction. The words were safe because they did not claim more than regulators could prove. Operationally, the response spoke louder. Grant McCarthy and Renee Voss were reassigned to southern routes. The Fairbanks to Barrow corridor became a place their company preferred not to test again. not because they could define the threat, but because the threat had already proven it could touch an aircraft and leave marks that survived the flight. For Grant, the last meaning was personal and cold. That route felt claimed. Not claimed by a nation or a weather system, but claimed by an intelligence or mechanism that could impose behavior on machines in midair. The frost was a signature. The heat scars were a signature. The 3 burn lines were a signature. A way of saying contact happened, and contact could happen again. Grant never saw the lines again, but the pattern stayed. He kept flying, but he watched the aurora differently, scanning for the moment it might freeze, for the moment a perfect straightness might appear, where nature should only ripple. When other pilots mentioned radios going dead with no static, GPS jumping while analog stayed calm, sudden frost that made no sense, or heat scars on metal, Grant listened because he recognized the structure behind it. Now it turns to you. What fits better? Classified testing, rare atmospheric physics, or an intelligence imposing rules on machines in midair? If the sky signaled tomorrow, would you recognize a pattern or explain it away until it fades? Drop your theories in the comments. Subscribe for new sightings, anomalous energy readings, and the repeating patterns hiding in plain sight. This isn't just a story, it's a warning. The desert highway looked unchanged in starlight, a thin ribbon of asphalt cutting through nothing. Evan Strickland stood beside his truck and watched 3 lights appear over the flats, one by one, perfectly spaced, the wrong color for any aircraft. They did not blink. They held position like marks on a grid. The lights began to orbit, not around each other, around Evan and Tessa Jordan. The air thickened. A hum formed behind Evan's eyes, then in his teeth, too clean to be wind. For a moment, his boots separated from the asphalt by a few inches, as if gravity had been negotiated away. Then everything snapped back. The lights were gone. The night looked normal. Evan checked his watch and felt his stomach drop. Time had moved backward. Nevada at night can make reality feel thin. Evan was 26 when it started, and he spent 11 years carrying the same unanswered gap. He was driving in a small military convoy on State Route 375 toward a classified site near Rachel. 5 vehicles, 12 personnel, routine on paper. The only reason he never wrote it off as his own mind was Tessa Jordan. She was there too, and years later she came back with the same nightmares and the same missing minutes. The first 2 hours were pure routine. No moon, stars dense enough to look textured, the road empty, the desert flat, the horizon erased. Then the radios failed. Not interference, not fading, a clean sudden silence that did not behave like terrain. Every channel died at once. The quiet felt engineered, like a hand placed over the spectrum. The convoy stopped in the same instant. Evan did not brake. The truck simply settled into a controlled halt. No brake lights ahead, no brake lights behind. 5 vehicles frozen in place. Evan looked up and saw a triangular absence sliding over the stars. Not a shadow, a shape that removed starlight. Massive, slow, silent, moving with purpose. Then the truck died completely. No dashboard glow, no engine vibration, no electronics like the world had been switched off around them. A thin beam dropped from the triangle. The color was wrong, pale with a faint blue edge that made the eyes ache. It swept the road slowly, left to right, revealing rocks and brush and cracked asphalt. But it cast no shadows. Objects looked flat, two-dimensional, like the ground had become a surface being read rather than lit. The beam stopped ahead of the convoy and held perfectly still. Evan could not measure time. His watch froze. With engines dead and radios silent, there was only breathing and the beam that behaved like something beyond physics. Then the beam retracted upward and the triangle rose, shrinking until the stars returned in their exact positions. Engines restarted on their own. Dashboards lit. Radios crackled alive. The convoy rolled forward again as if nothing had happened. At the checkpoint, Evan noticed the impossible detail. His watch was running again, but the time displayed was 13 minutes earlier than it should have been. Station clocks matched, logs matched. The timeline did not. The next morning, Evan found Tessa carrying the same hollow look. She had seen a detail he could not explain. The light behaved as if illumination and absence were separate things, moving independently. They searched for proof. Vehicle data should have shown a stop. GPS traces should have recorded a halt. Engine logs should have captured the shutdown. Instead, the records showed continuous forward motion from base to checkpoint, clean and uninterrupted, as if the convoy never paused at all. Tessa found something worse. The checkpoint perimeter cameras contained a missing block of footage exactly 13 minutes long, stamped with a generic electrical error code that did not fit the station's backup power. The gap matched the time distortion on Evan's watch with surgical precision. Evan tested the memory of others. A rear security driver who should have had the best view insisted the transport had been routine. No anomaly, no stop. The denial felt less like stubbornness and more like absence, the way Starlight had been absent under the triangle. They chose silence. In their world, reporting the impossible did not trigger investigation, it triggered evaluation. The story moved into their bodies instead, becoming insomnia and fragments that arrived like broken footage, curved blue-lit walls, a smooth warm table surface that did not feel like metal, figures just outside focus, pressure in the skull that felt like questions without words. Evan left the military months later and tried to build a normal life. It cracked anyway. 10 years passed, then Tessa returned with the same nightmares and the same wrong math in the clock. Long dream hours collapsed into a few real minutes. Evan's fragments sharpened too, brief flashes of curved blue-lit walls and silhouettes that never held focus. They went back to Nevada anyway. At dusk, the desert looked harmless, almost empty on purpose. By full night, it became what Evan remembered, a place that feels like it is waiting. They parked on the shoulder near the stretch that felt right and stepped out into a silence so deep it made the blood in Evan's ears sound loud. The first light appeared above the flats, a steady point with that pale, wrong hue. A second arrived beside it, then a third, perfectly spaced. They did not blink like aircraft. They held position like markers, then began to move in a controlled orbit, circling Evan and Tessa as if measuring them. Above the road, a triangular absence slid into view and swallowed Starlight. Not a shadow, not cloud, a clean geometric void that moved with intent. Under its centerline, a thin beam dropped, the same color Evan remembered from 2013, pale with a faint blue edge that hurt to stare at. The beam did not wash the desert with light. It carved a column of clarity through the darkness, and the ground inside it looked unnaturally flat, like texture without depth. The air thickened. A hum formed behind Evan's eyes, then in his teeth. Frost began to creep along the edges of Tessa's jacket despite the dry night, as if the temperature inside that corridor had been lowered independent of the world around it. Their truck died behind them without a sputter, lights off, engine silent, the dashboard blank in one clean cut. Inside the beam, figures resolved. Tall, narrow silhouettes standing where there should have been only empty desert. They did not walk in from the darkness. They appeared in positions, spaced with measured precision, facing the road as if it were a stage. Their limbs looked too long, their posture too still, and the edges of their bodies shimmered faintly as if they were not fully solid. When one of them turned its head, it did so without shifting weight, a smooth mechanical rotation that made Evan's stomach tighten. The beam held steady. The triangular void hovered low enough now that Evan could sense its scale, a silent mass pressing down on the night. The three orbiting lights tightened their circle, and Evan felt the moment his body stopped belonging to him. His boots separated from the asphalt by inches. Tessa rose beside him, rigid and weightless, her hair lifting as if underwater. The hum became a chord, layered and structured like a signal. Then everything snapped back. They dropped to the road. The beam retracted straight up, as if pulled by a reel. The void slid away, releasing the stars in perfect alignment. The truck's engine restarted on its own. Evan checked the time and felt his pulse spike. 13 minutes had inverted again, returned like a correction, as if the night had been edited and saved over. Tessa's face had changed. Not relief, recognition. A shock of memory trying to surface all at once, too large for language, leaving only tears and a tremor in her hands. Evan looked back to the desert where the figures had stood. The snowless ground was undisturbed, no footprints, no tracks, only a faint circular discoloration on the asphalt near where the beam had touched, as if heat had kissed the surface and left a subtle ring. Something had been there with them, not just lights in the sky, not just a craft, witnesses in the beam, watching closely enough to be seen, then choosing to vanish with the evidence. Route 375 doesn't feel like a random sighting. It feels like a repeatable method. Engines cut, radios muted, footage gapped, time bent, witnesses left arguing with their own clocks. If you've ever lost minutes on an empty road, if your electronics died all at once, if the sky looked like it removed the stars instead of covering them, tell me what happened. Patterns only surface when enough people compare the same impossible details. Drop your theories in the comments. Subscribe for more missing time cases and sightings that keep repeating where the desert is quiet enough to listen. Some disappear without leaving footprints. Others disappear by being deleted. On a clear Nevada morning, Mara Lewis watched a column of white light stab straight through the sky like a spear pinned to the earth. 34 minutes later, her aircraft data said she had not moved at all. 4 days after that, her flight coordinator, Victor Hale, was gone. Not missing, not dead, erased. Mara Lewis was 32, former Air Force, now flying contract environmental surveys along restricted edges of Nevada's test corridors. She trusted instruments the way other people trusted instinct. She trusted airspeed, fuel flow, heading, and the calm repetition of routes that never changed. Victor Hale was the ground link. He watched her telemetry, marked her waypoints, kept her on schedule, and kept her safe by being the voice that always answered. On August 14th, the sky gave Mara something that did not belong to weather or training or any human chart. At 6:45 over waypoint Alpha, the desert looked ordinary from above. Pale ridges, dry washes, scattered scrub, the kind of landscape that hides secrets simply by being too empty to question. Then the column appeared, a vertical shaft of white light, impossibly clean, rising from the ground and continuing upward past cloud height, past blue, as if it did not stop at atmosphere at all. It did not bloom or flare like lightning. It did not diffuse like sun glare. It was precise, like geometry forced into the sky. Mara banked to confirm it was real, and the light did not shift the way a reflection would. It remained anchored to a point in the desert like a nail through a map. As she closed the distance, the ground beneath it resolved into a perfect circle, a burn scar too symmetrical to be a wildfire. About 300 feet across, scorched into a crisp boundary, as if the sand had been branded by a massive seal. The surface inside the ring looked fused, darker and glassy in places. Even from altitude, it read as heat that had been controlled, not heat that had spread. Her instruments still looked normal for a few more seconds, as if the aircraft itself was debating whether to believe what her eyes were seeing. Then the first failure hit. The radio did not degrade into static. It simply stopped, like sound had been switched off. The radar blanked. The navigation display blinked once, then steadied on a frozen value that refused to update. Mara tried to turn away, a simple retreat that should have been automatic. The controls resisted, not like a jam, not like a mechanical failure, like an invisible hand had decided her heading for her. At the boundary of the light, the world began to misbehave. The air outside the windshield seemed thicker, not with weather, but with geometry. Her altimeter held, her engine held, and yet the horizon no longer shifted the way it should. It felt like the sky had been pinned in place. Then she saw them. Not reflections, not clouds. Aircraft. Dozens of them, suspended at different angles around the column like objects embedded in clear resin. A B-52 hung nose up, frozen mid-climb. A military helicopter sat tilted as if caught in a sudden gust that never finished happening. Older silhouettes hovered beside newer ones, all locked in the same impossible stillness. No contrails, no rotor blur, no motion at all. Mara's stomach dropped as the realization landed. This was not a beam in the sky. It was a trap that could hold time. She pulled the yoke and felt the response vanish. The controls did not jam mechanically. They simply stopped belonging to her. The Cessna continued forward with gentle certainty, as if guided on rails, slipping toward the center of the column. In the brief seconds before the light swallowed the cockpit, her instruments began to lie. Numbers flickered into values that could not coexist. Heading and speed remained calm while the world outside looked closer and farther at the same time. Her phone screen flashed once, not with an app, but with a blank brightness that felt like an eye-opening. And in that tightening space, Mara understood one thing with brutal clarity. Whatever held those aircraft was aware of her arrival, and it was making room. Mara never felt the aircraft enter the column. There was no jolt, no turbulence, no sense of crossing a boundary. One moment she was watching the white shaft carve the sky. The next, the cockpit was inside a brightness that didn't behave like light. It didn't illuminate, it replaced. Shadows didn't fade, they stopped existing. Sound thinned into a muffled layer. The engine vibration became distant, like a memory of motion instead of motion itself. Outside the windows was a pale emptiness, threaded with faint grid lines, as if the air had been printed. The suspended aircraft were closer now, and worse. Not just frozen, but collected. A B-52 hung at an angle that should have ended in catastrophe, yet it stayed pinned. A military helicopter sat motionless with rotor blades locked mid-sweep. Older silhouettes hovered too. Airframes that belonged to decades Mara knew only from manuals. They weren't floating, they were archived. Her instruments tried to argue. The GPS string kept reordering itself. The clock flickered through impossible timestamps. A warning tone repeated too steadily to be random, too clean to be failure. Then something noticed her. Not a figure, not a voice. A tension, vast and ancient, pressing against the inside of her skull like deep water. Memories opened with surgical precision. Childhood, training, the first solo, stall recovery, the smell of fuel on hot tarmac, Victor Hale's face in the control room. Each moment surfaced, turned, inspected. The pain wasn't physical. It was cognitive. Her identity tightened into a shape that could be measured. The harder she resisted, the more she sensed resistance itself being logged. A final impression branded itself into her mind. The column wasn't a beam. It was a corridor of light with faint circuitry like striations, bending where geometry shouldn't bend. The frozen aircraft weren't accidents. They were samples, held at the edge of time for as long as the intelligence chose. Then the pressure released. Mara blinked and the cockpit snapped back into ordinary physics. Blue sky, normal glare, familiar engine hum. Her hands were already locked on the yoke, knuckles white. The panel read green across the board, calm and indifferent. The logs were worse than her nerves. Flight data showed no forward movement for 34 minutes. No drift, no turn. A perfect hold at altitude, as if the plane had been pinned to a point in space. Engine parameters stayed normal the whole time. It was recorded like routine, like time had paused her and restarted without leaving fingerprints. Back on the ground, she went straight to Victor Hale. Someone had to confirm her track. Someone had to say they'd seen the gap. Instead, she found a blank space where Victor should have been. Not an empty chair. Gone. His desk didn't exist. The schedule board had no name in his slot. The staff list skipped cleanly from one coordinator to the next with no gap, no correction marks, no hint a line had been removed. Mara searched emails, flight plans, sign-offs, duty logs. The system returned nothing, not even an error. It was as if the database didn't recognize the letters in his name, and the people around her didn't react like someone had vanished. They reacted like she'd asked about a person who never worked there. Confusion, mild impatience, polite correction. Mara watched their faces and felt something colder than fear settle in her chest. This wasn't denial. It was absence engineered so completely it had rewritten the room. Only Mara still remembered Victor. That was the real proof the column wasn't just an anomaly in the sky. It could freeze machines like insects in amber. It could stop a plane without leaving a trace. And it could erase a man so thoroughly that even bureaucracy forgot how to say his name. Mara left the station with her flight log in hand and a single certainty sharpening into place. The column had let her go, but hadn't let Victor Hale. Mara didn't go public. She checked the data first. 34 minutes missing. Then Victor Hale was erased. No files, no emails, no one who truly remembered him. That was the real message. The column didn't just freeze aircraft. It could delete people. 6 months later, one text slipped through. VH. 2 letters saying he still existed somewhere, time couldn't reach. If reality can erase a person, the only defense is to make the story too widespread to erase. What would you do if someone vanished and everyone swore they never existed? Drop your theories in the comments. Subscribe for more. The lighthouse glass gives one dull shudder, like something tapped it from the inside. Jenna stares out at an ocean that suddenly feels flat, stretched tight. Then cold blue points lift out of the darkness in perfect space, too precise to be natural. No wind, no surf, just a pressure in her chest. She sweeps a flashlight over the water. No reflection, no shimmer, nothing. The glow fills the room, yet the sea stays ink black, as if the light refuses to fall. The blue mass shifts sideways without drifting, more like reality repositions it. She turns back to her desk. Her logbook is open, and a fresh line in her handwriting shines wet with ink. She hasn't touched the pen. Outside, the blue points hold steady, patient, exact, like they're not watching the ocean, like they're counting her. Jenna didn't take the lighthouse job because she loved being alone. She took it because the ocean felt predictable. Tides, wind, the steady sweep of the beacon. Then she noticed the first wrong thing. Some nights the coast went too still. Not calm, absent, no gulls, no slap of kelp. Even the wind sounded distant, like it had moved a mile away. And it wasn't random. It arrived like an appointment, deep in the night, on the same kind of timing, as if something out past the rocks was counting down. Jenna learned its schedule before she admitted it was a schedule. It only came on nights when the Pacific went unnaturally flat, when even the lighthouse glass stopped humming. At 2:47 a.m., a blue sphere would simply exist offshore. No approach, no blink, no drift, hanging about 50 feet above the water like it had a preferred coordinate. The lighthouse beam swept across it, and nothing changed. No glare, no flare. Worse, the blue didn't reflect on the waves. The water beneath stayed too dark, as if the light refused to touch it. Jenna tried to prove it was normal. A compass on her desk would hesitate off north during each pulse, then snap back the moment the sphere vanished. Her handheld radio hiss thinned until the silence felt like pressure on her ears. And sometimes the sphere didn't move the way things move. It would shift positions without traveling. One instant over open water, the next instant closer to a sea stack. No glide, no acceleration, just a clean new location, like the distance between had been cut out. On the 8th night, she caught the detail that ended her denial. Between pulses, the surface briefly showed faint geometric seams, like panels under skin. In its center, a core of darkness appeared for a heartbeat. Not shadow, not empty space, something solid that swallowed detail like a pupil. That's when Jenna understood the worst part. It wasn't hovering near the lighthouse because the lighthouse was a landmark. It was there because she was there, returning night after night to see whether she would keep looking back. Jenna stopped calling it a sphere after the 9th night. It didn't just hover, it positioned itself where she would look. If she switched windows, it ended up framed in the new glass as if the air had been pre-measured. The lighthouse began to misbehave on the pulses. The rotating lens would hesitate for a fraction of a second. Her wall clock did the same thing, pause, then catch up, like time was being tapped and released. Each time the blue brightened, Jenna felt a low vibration inside her teeth, a hum she couldn't hear so much as feel. The sea stayed flat, no wind, no reflection beneath the light. By the 11th night, when it vanished, the sky didn't snap back immediately. The stars seemed to lag, an empty shape held in place for a few seconds. Then everything corrected itself like a screen refreshing. On the 13th night, the lighthouse beam swept across the object and suddenly went short, scattering like it had struck invisible glass. The barrier held for 3 heartbeats. Then the blue answered. A thin line dropped downward, not a spotlight, not a column, more like a measuring rod lowered from the object. It stopped a few feet above the water, perfectly level, refusing contact with the moving sea. Jenna stepped back from the window. Her radio, unplugged, dead, clicked once with a single pop of static. And she understood the shift. It wasn't just visiting on schedule anymore. It was closing the distance, not across the ocean, across the rules. The next night, the light was already waiting offshore, exactly where it always was, as if it had never left. Jenna climbed to the lantern room with her coat half-zipped, moving too fast to feel the cold until she reached the glass and stopped. The sphere hovered 50 feet above the water, pulsing like a slow heart. Its electric blue glow didn't spill onto the waves. No shimmer, no reflection, just a bright thing hanging over a black ocean that refused to acknowledge it. The hum was back too, not loud, but inside her, in her teeth, in the hinge of her jaw. The air tasted faintly metallic, like a storm had passed through the room and forgot to take the smell with it. Then the water beneath the sphere answered. Not with a wave, not with foam, with a change in texture, like the surface was becoming smooth and tight, as if the ocean had taken a breath and decided to hold it. A second light rose. It came out of the sea without a splash, no spray, no drip trail. It simply lifted, perfectly clean, and held position. Then a third, then more, ascending in a wide arc, each one the size of a small car, spacing themselves with surgical precision until Jenna realized they weren't forming a cluster. They were building a ring, miles across, centered on the first sphere like it was the anchor point. Every orb pulsed in sync, a slow, coordinated rhythm that made her stomach sink with the certainty that this wasn't random, this was timed. Jenna swung the lighthouse beam across the water on instinct. The moment the beam touched the ring, every orb brightened together, like it noticed her noticing it. The lantern room filled with that cold blue glare, and for a split second Jenna saw her own reflection in the glass. Wide eyes, mouth slightly open, the kind of face you make when your brain runs out of explanations. The radio on the desk gave a single sharp and went dead. Not static, not fading, just absence. The way a sound disappears in a vacuum. At the center of the ring, the ocean lifted straight upward. A column formed, smooth as poured glass, rising without falling, without wobble, without any of the chaos water is supposed to have. It climbed higher than her instincts could measure. Inside the column, faint patterns moved like layered circuitry made of current and salt, lines and nodes sliding in slow, deliberate geometry. Jenna pressed her palm to the window. The glass vibrated, barely, a fine tremor that matched the pulse of the lights. When she pulled her hand away, a thin fog of condensation appeared in the shape of her fingers, except the fingertips looked slightly stretched, as if the glass had learned her hand wrong on purpose. The hum rose until it stopped being sound and became pressure behind her eyes. Then the message hit. No voice, no language, just a sequence of images too fast to hold, arriving with the weight of memory rather than dream. A coastline under ancient ice, a whale's eye in deep water reflecting starlight, forests of kelp like submerged cities, then abrupt flashes of the future. Empty nets, white coral, dead zones spreading like bruises, oceans still moving, endless motion, but nothing alive inside the movement. What shook her wasn't the horror, it was the tone beneath it. Not anger, not pleading, not threat, witness, as if something in the water had been keeping a record for a very long time. And tonight, it cracked the archive open, just long enough to show her what was being saved. The column lowered as smoothly as it rose. The ring loosened. One by one, the orbs dimmed and sank back into darkness without ripples, as if the sea swallowed them without chewing. Only the original sphere remained, hovering in the same spot as always, pulsing steady and patient. Jenna checked the clock. 2:47. Exactly, but her logbook was open on the desk, not where she'd left it. A fresh line of ink sat there in her own handwriting, still slightly glossy, like it had been written seconds ago. She didn't remember picking up the pen. The line read, "We remember what you drop." By morning, Jenna found a perfect ring of kelp on the rocks below the lighthouse, too neat for any tide. That night at 2:47, the ocean went still again. No lights, just the same low hum in the glass. Jenna kept writing anyway, because it felt less like something was visiting, and more like something had always been there, finally paying attention. If it happened to you, would you leave proof behind, or try to forget the sea ever looked back? The basement dispatch room in Santa Rosa is so quiet, Leona Ward can hear the fluorescent lights breathing. Then the clock flips to 2:11 a.m., and every line on her console lights up at once. Not one caller, not two, all of them. Static floods her headset, thick, wet-sounding interference like the desert itself is trying to talk through a dead radio. Voices break in and out, a man screaming, a child crying, a woman praying, then all of it collapses into a single, impossible silence. Leona leans closer to the screen, waiting for coordinates to populate. They don't. And then, without sound, without a phone line, a word lands inside her mind, cold and command-like, as if it's being read directly into her thoughts. Return. Leona has worked 911 dispatch for 12 years in a town so small it feels like a dot on the map. Santa Rosa, New Mexico, a stop along Route 54, a black ribbon of highway slicing through open desert. Her night shift runs midnight to 8 a.m. Most hours are nothing. Lonely motorists, stray animals, the occasional drunk who can't find the motel. Out here, the desert keeps its own schedule, and for reasons Leona can't explain, it started calling her at 2:11 a.m. Firstly, Leona answers a call drowned in thick static, like the signal is being squeezed. The man says his name is Michael Valdez. He's on Route 54, alone in the desert. He's terrified, not because something is following him, but because it's matching him. A cluster of bright lights holding steady distance, too clean, too steady, with no aircraft blink pattern. Then his voice tightens. Radio died, GPS died, phone's glitching, only 911 still connects. Leona tries to locate him. The system returns nothing, no coordinates, no map pin, like the call isn't coming from anywhere real. Michael says the road feels wrong, like he's driving into dense air. He swears he passed the same reflector post twice. The static swells and his voice warps for a second, still his but stretched thin. "It's not behind me anymore," he whispers. Leona asks where it is. A pause, in front, like it's waiting. He describes a perfect white line suspended in the air, too straight to be natural, hanging across the dark. And inside the glare, he says he can see figures, not shadows, more like silhouettes behind a veil, shifting when the light shifts. A low hum rises under the static. Michael starts to shout, "It's coming down," and the call cuts off mid-breath, clean and instant. Leona refreshes the archive. There's no recording, no normal log entry, only a corrupted 8-second file of pure static. PD patrols Route 54, no gray Honda, no skid marks, nothing. Later, they confirms Michael is home, confused, insisting he never went out. His car sits in the driveway, dust-caked, untouched. Leona can't forget the one impossible detail. Out there, whatever was happening, 911 was the only thing that could still hear him. 3 weeks later, Leona is back on the night shift, watching the clock slide toward 2:11 a.m. The line hits with that abrasive static, thicker than noise, like pressure. A woman gasps out her name, Sarah Baker. She's on Route 54, mile 265, and something is following her. Her GPS is frozen, her dash glitches, and yet somehow 911 still connects. Leona pings the call, her console answers with a blank field, as if Sarah is speaking from a place the map can't name. Sarah describes a light that isn't headlights, red-white pulses, steady as a heartbeat, hovering too high for any vehicle. Then her voice tightens. "My steering wheel's going stiff, like it's being held. The static swells." Sarah whispers that the brightness is opening like a seam, and inside it she can see tall, thin shapes stepping out, too long-limbed, too precise, as if they're copying how a person moves. Leona orders her to stop, lock the doors, stay inside. Sarah inhales sharply. "It's in front of me." There's a white click. The call ends cleanly. Leona checks the logs. No recording, no proper entry. Just another gap. Patrol sweeps Route 54 and finds nothing. Later, another department confirms Sarah is home asleep, her car parked outside, no memory of leaving. Leona stares at the empty file slot, because now she's sure of one thing. Whatever owns 211 is learning. 3 weeks after Sarah's call, Leona stops trusting quiet. 2:11 a.m. All of it breaks. Not one call, several slamming into the console at once. Different lines, different voices, same panic threaded through them like a shared current. A man is yelling over wind and static that doesn't sound like weather. "Mile 277, Route 54, we're stopped." He isn't saying we pulled over. He's saying we were made still. Behind his voice, a chorus, women crying, a kid screaming for someone to wake up, a car horn stuck down and then cutting off as if the sound itself was unplugged. Leona tries to pin the calls down. Anything, tower, cell path, a hint of location. The screen doesn't fail. It behaves perfectly, smooth and blank, like it's politely refusing to admit the calls exist. Then the man's voice rises into a raw, disbelieving shout. "It's right above us. It's a triangle." The word, triangle, is all she gets before the line distorts into something thick and metallic, like a radio chewing on a magnet. In the distortion, another voice appears, not frantic, not human, not even through the speaker, more like it's being laid over the room. Leona's ears ring, her teeth ache. The air in the basement turns dense, as if the desert has pressed its face against the building. And then a single word arrives inside her mind, with no sound attached to it. Not heard, not imagined. Placed. Return. Leona's hand goes cold on the desk. She stares at the console like it might start bleeding. She tries to breathe, but the word sits in her chest like a weight that doesn't belong to her. The call's cut off together. No fade, no click, just gone. Minutes later, the first patrol unit reaches mile 277. When the officer radios in, his voice is controlled in that way that means he's forcing it. 5 vehicles, all on the shoulder and partway into the lane. Hazard lights on, engines running. Leona grips the edge of her desk. No occupants, he continues. Doors open on 2, phones on seats. One car has a kid's shoe, just one. Her stomach drops. He adds something quieter, like he doesn't want the desert to overhear him. There are marks on the road, 3 circles, burned down to the aggregate, placed like someone measured it. Leona writes it down anyway, because writing is the only thing that makes it feel real. 3 burns. Triangle. No skid marks. No signs of a struggle. No footprints leading away. Just 5 running cars and 12 missing people, as if they were removed from the scene the way a hand lifts pieces off a board. Leona realizes 211 isn't a time the way normal people mean it. It's a doorway. She tries to quit after that, tells herself it's over, tells herself she can't be the person who sits in a basement while the highway steals families, but the number follows her. On the microwave when she wakes too early, on the gas pump when she refuses to look up, on her car clock drifting to 211 as if it's being gently corrected. Then, months later, she's back on nights. Not because she wants to be, because some part of her needs to know if the desert will do it again. Needs to know if that word return was a warning or an instruction. One shift, the phone never rings at all. No incoming lines. No radio chatter. No wind noise through the vents. The basement becomes so still it feels staged. Leona sits there with her headset on, listening to nothing, and starts to understand what being watched actually means. Not a gaze, but a presence arranging the world around you. At 211, her monitors flicker just once. Not a power surge, not a glitch, a blink. And then, without sound, without language, without any place for it to travel from, a message settles into her mind with the calm certainty of something that has done this many times before. We heard you. Soon, you will hear us. Leona doesn't scream. That's the worst part. She just sits there, frozen, because she knows what comes next is not another missing car. It's not another distressed caller. It's the moment the thing on Route 54 stops using the highway as a hunting ground and starts using her. What makes Route 54 terrifying isn't the triangle, it's 211, a repeatable timestamp like something learning the same doorway. The calls carry panic, not location, as if where doesn't matter. Devices don't fail naturally, they get quietly overridden. The word return doesn't warn, it commands. Mile 277 feels less like an incident and more like a demonstration. And we heard you. Soon you will hear us isn't an ending, it's a countdown. If your phone rang, what kind of light can hang inside heavy fog without diffusing, bend a spotlight beam like glass, and erase 12 minutes from a boat's GPS as if the water itself can edit time? And if a perfect white sphere is not illuminated but rendered, who is it meant to see when it appears over Puget Sound before sunrise? Logan Pierce had worked the Everett Harbor docks for 12 years, running a small fishing boat and trusting what could be checked, logged, and fixed. Engines, tide charts, weather windows, and hard numbers that did not care about belief. On November 8th last year, a canceled salmon charter left his boat fueled and ready, and Dylan Mercer, a calm marina maintenance worker with long sea experience, talked him into a quick run to check crab pots near Jetty Island. They cast off at 5:47 a.m. into thick fog and cold air, and Logan logged the time as always, but within minutes the sound felt staged. Because the harbor sounds vanished, birds were absent, and even the fog seemed too uniform, like a curtain pulled across the water for privacy. And before either man saw any light at all, Logan had the unwanted certainty that something out there had already noticed them and was waiting for them to enter the right piece of water. For the first 10 minutes, Logan navigated by memory and lights, listening to the steady pulse of his engine. Then the fog thinned in uneven sheets and the silence tightened, and Dylan touched Logan's shoulder and pointed ahead. At first, Logan assumed it was a headlight from another boat, but the light did not sway and did not jitter with water. It held position like a marker pinned into the air. A bright white point hovered in the fog about 200 yards ahead and roughly 20 feet above the surface. And when Logan raised binoculars, the shape resolved into a perfect white sphere with edges too sharp to belong in mist. The fog did not scatter its glow. There was no halo, no fall-off, just a clean circle that looked rendered rather than illuminated. And as Logan stared, he noticed the sphere was not merely bright, it was exact, as if it had been drawn by a system that preferred precision over nature. Then Logan saw the first alien cue that was not light at all, a faint geometric shimmer in the fog around the sphere, barely visible, like a grid line catching on moisture, and it moved in slow pulses that did not match wind or waves. Dylan said the air felt thick, and Logan realized the sphere was not an object floating in fog. It was an interface, and the fog was being used as a screen. When they closed to about 100 yards, Logan cut the engine and let the boat drift, and the depth finder read 80 feet with nothing between hull and bottom. No structure, no shadow, just open water under a thing that should not have been able to hold still in moving air. Logan raised a high-power handheld spotlight and fired the beam straight at the sphere, expecting glare, but the beam curved cleanly and wrapped around it as if space had turned to glass. And in the same instant, the fog around the sphere showed faint angular seams that pulsed once like a heartbeat, and Dylan whispered that his ears hurt even though there was still no sound. The sphere slid north with no wake and then snapped into a perfect 90-degree turn toward deeper water, and pressure slammed into Logan's chest like a silent bass hit while his teeth began to ache, and the console erupted into chaos, compass spinning, depth numbers jumping, GPS flipping between Everett and Canada as if the boat had been briefly relocated and returned. As the fog thinned, the sphere brightened like a signal marker and revealed what it had been hiding. A dark gray craft the size of a bus, but flatter, disc-like, seamless, with no windows and no joints, rotating toward them while faint scanning lines rippled across its underside, and the boat's lights dipped as if something was drawing power through the air. A wave of heat rolled through the cabin and into their bones. The air tasted metallic, and then the craft tilted to about 45 degrees and launched straight up into the cloud layer, faster than Logan's eyes could hold, and the pressure vanished instantly. The electronics snapped back to normal, and the sound resumed its ordinary noises as if nothing had happened. They turned back toward the marina in silence because neither of them had language that fit what they had watched. And when Logan checked the clock, it read 6:14 a.m., only 27 minutes since departure, yet his body felt stretched as if hours had passed, and both men had red skin on their faces and forearms, like a severe sunburn, despite fog before sunrise. Logan searched for similar reports and found dozens from fishermen, pilots, and hikers reaching back years, all repeating the same elements with an accuracy that felt engineered. A flawless sphere that does not diffuse in mist, electronics failing in synchronized bursts, the air going unnaturally quiet, and time missing in clean blocks, and the repetition tightened into a single idea. This was a corridor with rules, not a random sighting. That afternoon, Logan noticed a perfect circle on his left wrist the size of a coin, pale and sharply defined as if drawn with a compass. And Dylan reported a matching circle on his neck under the jawline. And by morning, Dylan had 3 new circles on his forearm forming a perfect equilateral triangle, while Logan found new circles on his shoulder and collarbone with the same spacing. And when Logan tried to photograph them, the phone overexposed the marks into a bright white ring for a single frame, then returned to normal as if the pattern flared only for the sensor. They began documenting everything: clinic photos, time-stamped notes, instrument readings from the boat. But the more they recorded, the more the environment responded, because that night Logan felt the same pressure in his chest again with no sound attached. His boat compass swung several degrees on its own while the engine was off, and a faint white point appeared deep in the fog beyond the breakwater, steady and motionless, then split into 2 identical points for the length of one breath before merging and winking out. Dylan called a few minutes later, shaken, and said he had just heard Logan's voice on his phone telling him to meet at Jetty Island at first light, but Logan had not called. And when Dylan tried to replay the voicemail, the file existed yet contained only silence. And on Logan's navigation app, a new recent track appeared, a thin straight line from the marina to the jetty corridor, at a time his boat had never left the slip, followed by a clean blank span, matching the missing 12 minutes exactly, as if the corridor had learned how to write invitations in his own data. By the third night, the circles looked slightly brighter under dock lights, and at 5:47 a.m., Logan's logbook was open to a fresh page on the galley table, with the departure time written in his own handwriting, even though he had not picked up a pen. And when he went to find Dylan, the berth was empty and Dylan's truck was gone, but the gate camera showed nothing except a brief wash of white across the pavement and a single frame where the air looked gridded. And after that, Dylan stopped answering entirely, leaving Logan with a fate already partially unfolding, because the corridor was no longer waiting offshore. It was reaching into schedules, records, and people. In early December, Logan returned to the Jetty Island waterline alone, and the sound went quiet the moment he crossed the invisible boundary, and the depth finder showed a large object hovering at 60 feet where the bottom should have been 90. So he lowered a GoPro and saw curved brushed metal with no seams before the cable locked hard as if held. Then the feed collapsed into perfect black for the final 30 seconds, and his GPS flickered into another clean blank span. On the way back, a flawless white point hovered just above the water off his bow, and his spotlight beam curved around it exactly as before. And when Logan reached for the radio to call Dylan, the display showed Dylan already connected, yet only a thin layered cadence came through, steady and close, like counting. If the corridor can edit logs, voices, and departures, what exactly is left of choice? Comment your theory, then hit like and subscribe for the next case. The last transmission from St. Lawrence Island was not a report, it was a warning. They are here, so many. And then the station went silent as if someone had removed it from the world. When Morgan Hale arrived months later, the power was on, the coffee was still there, and the security footage showed 7 seconds where snow stopped falling, and the staff stood frozen like statues before vanishing out of the frame. In the winter of 2019, Arctic Station Echo sat in northern Alaska, about 60 miles from the nearest settlement, and Morgan Hale commanded it with the disciplined calm of a veteran Air Force pilot who had spent 15 years trusting procedures more than instincts. The outpost watched the sky with the long-range ANFPS-117 radar until the routine broke into clean interruptions, radar ghosts that blinked in and out at precise intervals, and a faint blue-white shimmer on the horizon that no aurora forecast predicted. Tyler Kovac called Hale to the console because the returns were not behaving like weather and not behaving like aircraft, and the first detail that tightened Hale's focus was geometry, because the tracks did not smear or drift, they appeared and vanished like a diagram being tested. Outside, the sky looked empty, yet the station radio caught a thin harmonic tone under the noise, and Hale felt the uneasy certainty that whatever was out there was not lost. It was probing, checking which sensors reacted, and which humans would step into -40 air to confirm what the radar insisted was real. Tyler tracked the contact as it blinked in and out in clean intervals, returning to the same point with a precision that felt deliberate, and each reappearance came with impossible jumps, 8,000 to 20,000 feet, dead stop to over 500 knots. Then it settled into a perfect 5-mile radius circle around the station like a compass drawing on the sky. There was no transponder, no radio call, and no wind smear, and the return was so sharp it felt less like reflection and more like something allowing itself to be seen. When the track closed to within 20 miles, the primary split and released 6 smaller returns that locked into a flawless hexagon around it with spacing that never changed, and the formation rotated as one body while the center point held steady, and Hale felt the same cold certainty he felt in the cockpit when a threat chose its approach. He stepped outside with night optics into -40 air and saw it at last. a blue-white ring pulsing like breath with 6 colder points riding its perimeter, and the whole structure slid across the stars without acceleration, as if inertia did not apply. Then the ring dropped toward 3,000 feet, and the pulse quickened once, and everything cut out at the same instant. Radar clean, sky empty, radio silent, leaving Hale staring at darkness that felt staged. Because the disappearance was too perfect to be escape, it was a shutdown. Hale spent 3 hours writing a detailed report with times, ranges, speed brackets, altitude jumps, and the hexagon formation, sending it through secure channels to Elmendorf and onward to NORAD, and he expected either silence or skepticism, but the response arrived as action instead of words. Before the next night cycle ended, a C-130 with no markings dropped onto the snow strip and unloaded modern surveillance gear, infrared cameras, electromagnetic sensors, and a small team who gave names without histories, and the upgrade changed the station's atmosphere the way a locked door changes a hallway, because everyone now understood they were not just watching the sky, they were being watched by their own command. Hale received a short order that left no room for curiosity: observe and record, and do not attempt contact. And the wording carried an implication that unsettled him more than any official confirmation, because it suggested contact had already happened elsewhere and did not end well. Tyler asked why the order mattered if the objects vanished on command, and Hale had no answer that felt safe, only the sense that the phenomenon had demonstrated control of detection, and the only thing the station could still control was its own behavior. Months later, a monitoring station on St. Lawrence Island in the Bering Sea went silent after a final message that arrived stripped of professionalism and full of fear. They are here, so many, and the abruptness triggered a response that pulled Hale into the field alongside a small team assembled in haste, people who asked for sensor data first and names second. When their aircraft arrived, the station was powered, doors intact, equipment running, coffee left in cups, and 6 personnel missing with no tracks that made sense. And the only evidence that refused to be rational was the security footage, because at the moment of disappearance, time seemed to stop for 7 seconds. Snowflakes hung suspended mid-fall. A dangling cable froze mid-sway. The staff stood motionless like statues, and then the frame jumped and they were gone, leaving the room unchanged except for the absence of people. Outside, the upgraded sensors came alive as if something had allowed them back online, and the radar display filled with returns, not one craft but dozens, forming layered rings around the island that tightened and loosened with orchestral coordination, while a second layer of contacts flickered above them at different altitudes, like a stacked geometry that refused to resolve into a single picture. Through night optics, Hale saw the sky populate with cold points of light that moved without visible acceleration, sliding into new positions like pieces on a board, and then a larger structure descended to within 1,000 feet of the station. Not a simple craft, but a complex presence that looked wrong to the eye, edges appearing and disappearing depending on where Hale focused, depth folding into itself, as if parts of it existed at angles the mind could not hold. And beneath it, the snowfield brightened in faint hexagonal cells that pulsed in sync with the surrounding fleet. Then the contact moved inward, and Hale felt it not as a voice in the room, but as a transmission inside his thoughts. A kind of mathematical music that carried images with it. Earth seen from above, ice thinning, forests burning, cities bright at night, and then other worlds that looked nothing like human maps. And the message was not a sentence, but an understanding pressed whole into his mind, that these beings had observed humanity for a long time, and that the planet's trajectory mattered to them for reasons they did not fully explain. Several members of the team staggered or gripped the table as if the images had weight, and on a monitor the station's personnel roster flickered as if being rewritten, names blinking in and out like radar returns. And Hale realized the phenomenon was not limited by location, it was moving through systems, attention, and memory. When the transmission eased, the island was still encircled, the fleet holding position with impossible precision, and inside the station the cameras captured only more absence. Chairs slightly shifted, a half-written note on a clipboard that ended mid-word, and a thin layer of frost fractals spreading across the inner window glass in deliberate geometric branching. The missing staff did not walk back into frame. No footsteps approached. No voices returned on the internal radios, only the sense that the station had been processed and left running like a device. Hale stood in a room full of power and equipment and felt the cold truth settle. Whatever took them could also decide whether returning them served its purpose, and the silence that followed felt less like an accident and more like an answer. After St. Lawrence, the official story became silence. But inside that silence, a new structure formed. Project Aurora, a compartmented effort to collect data, compare patterns, and prepare for a future contact that might not be optional. Hale understood the unsettling truth that the phenomenon could appear as a ring, a hexagon, a fleet, or a structure that did not fit 3 dimensions, and in every form it demonstrated the same thing: control of time slices, control of geometry, and control of what humans could record and later swear happened. If the beings can pause 7 seconds of falling snow, surround an island with stacked formations, and leave a staff station running without the staff, are they studying us, warning us, or practicing the mechanics of taking without giving back? Leave your theory in the comments, and if you want the next case, hit like and subscribe. He filmed the brightest thing he ever saw on I-40. The playback showed only empty asphalt and dark sky. Then a voice arrived inside his thoughts, calmly. Jasper Mitchell was 24, working security for remote oil sites. He drove between pump stations during long night patrols. Uinta Basin nights felt empty, yet never truly quiet. Headlights cut dust, and radios filled the cab with hiss. Then one Tuesday in October 2019, a sensor went dead. Control asked Jasper to check well 14 in the north sector. 3 miles out, the wind stopped as if switched off. Air pressure dropped and his ears popped inside the cab. The desert sound vanished, leaving only engine vibration. Jasper realized the basin could silence him on command. Well 14 sat alone under black silence. Jasper stopped at the access road, engine idling. The desert felt sealed and the stars looked dim. A white light hovered 40 feet above the pump jack. Its edge stayed razor clean, wrapped in a faint blue rim. It cast no shadow on dirt, steel, or Jasper's hood. Jasper filmed through the windshield, yet every clip saved pure black. The real light still burned behind his eyelids. His camera lens frosted, then cleared without heat. The blue rim flickered, like sparks holding perfect shape. A low hum rose through boots and into teeth. His chest tightened, as if air folded inward. The light jumped sideways without traveling, like frames were cut. Each jump hit his ribs with one hard internal shove. Under the light, a tall, slender outline formed beside metal. Long fingers moved in slow arcs, never touching the pump. The outline turned toward Jasper, and the hum deepened. Jasper stepped out, and the ground felt colder than air. Ozone stung his nose sharp and clean. The light shot upward and vanished, leaving no trail. He checked panels, expecting scorch marks or melted wiring. Everything looked untouched, yet the sensor signal returned. No alarm logs remained, as if nothing happened. On the hill, a faint blue point lingered, then winked out. Jasper drove away, feeling watched by the empty ridgeline. 2 weeks later, well 9 went silent, and Jasper drove alone. Fog pooled low, yet the basin stayed unnaturally windless. A white sphere hovered above the wellhead, shadowless and steady. Its blue rim crackled, but no heat rose from it. Jasper recorded again, speaking timestamps to prove what he saw. Playback showed only his cab, bright dashboards, and empty windows. Outside, the light kept pulsing, like breath behind frosted glass. Each pulse pressed his chest, then released, then pressed again. The hum returned, deeper now, vibrating the steering wheel. The sphere jumped twice, snapping to new angles without motion. 3 smaller lights blinked in, forming a tight triangle above it. The triangle rotated once, then stopped, perfectly centered over piping. Under the lights, a tall, slender figure appeared beside the pump. Its head looked elongated, and eyes looked black and almond-shaped. Long fingers hovered over valves, never touching metal, yet gauges changed. Pressure spikes flickered on his panel, then normalized instantly. The well's alarm light flashed, then the log erased itself. Jasper watched numbers rewrite, like someone editing a report live. He started mapping every sighting from other guards and crews. Reports clustered between wells 4 and 37 with harsh precision. They followed groundwater lines, uranium claims, and rare mineral seams. Some nights showed arcs of lights, swapping positions above ridgelines. Those swaps matched chest pressure pulses on every witness statement. One crew reported a silver shape sliding low beyond the berm. Another saw figures working inside a luminous ground structure. Jasper began suspecting resource surveys, not random hauntings. He felt counted, like each well was a numbered checkpoint. He kept routes secret, yet the lights found him anyway. On December 18th, Jasper patrolled the north sector alone. At 2:47 a.m., every pump stopped together. That should have required a master cut. 8 white lights appeared across the basin at once. Each hovered above a different wellhead. They held perfect spacing and moved in formation. Jasper's engine died mid-road without warning. His phone froze on 2:47 a.m., refusing to change. The hum returned, deeper and heavier. The lights swapped positions without traveling between points. Each swap pressed his chest inward once. The basin felt compressed, then released, then compressed again. A silver shape slid low beyond a berm, soundless. It looked bus-sized and seam-free. Jasper saw it pause beside well 22. Tall figures moved around the silver shape, smooth and efficient. Their bodies looked too narrow for any human. Their heads looked elongated under the white glow. Their eyes looked black and almond-shaped. Their skin looked pale gray with a wet sheen. Long fingers flexed with narrow-jointed segments. They never touched steel, yet valves turned anyway. Gauges spiked, then returned to normal instantly. Jasper tried recording with his phone again. The screen showed only his cab and black windows. Outside, the lights pulsed like breathing lungs. The hum matched the pulses beating through his ribs. Then one figure turned toward Jasper's headlights. Jasper felt a thought arrive, cold and clinical. It showed wells as dots and roads as thin lines. It showed Jasper's truck as a moving mark. The thought shifted and the mark moved without him. Jasper blinked and saw 2 trucks ahead. Both looked like Unit 14, identical in dust. Both drove the same line, perfectly aligned. Jasper looked down and saw his wheel unmoving. His truck was not moving, yet scenery shifted. The lights rose together and vanished. Sound returned in a rushing wave. The pumps restarted by themselves seconds later. Jasper checked his phone again, now 3:14 a.m. 27 minutes were missing from his memory. Dispatch called him and spoke very carefully. It said never report lights on open channels. It said the basin keeps records in silence. Jasper drove back shaking, trying to breathe. Jasper quit and moved to Price, Utah within days. He avoided oil roads and night work. The white light still appeared behind ridgelines sometimes. It stayed low, patient, and perfectly still. Jasper began seeing himself in reflections too often. A second Jasper stood across parking lots, watching. The double wore similar clothes and moved smoothly. Its eyes looked empty and too still. Its voice sounded layered, like many speakers. Jasper fled to Provo, then farther north. The light followed at a constant distance. Road signs seemed to change after he passed them. GPS routes looped back without reason. He felt guided, not chased by the light. His phone rang once from an unknown number. Only static answered, then the hum. A text appeared with no sender name. It read, "Do not look at it." The screen then went black. Before dawn, Jasper drove toward Salt Lake City again. The white point sat behind him in the mirror. Another set of headlights appeared beside it, steady. The second car kept matching his speed exactly. Jasper glanced left and saw his own face driving. The double smiled without warmth, then looked forward. Jasper's chest pressure returned in steady pulses. The road ahead looked longer, then suddenly shorter. His cracked phone buzzed with one final message. It said, "See you soon," then went dead. The hum rose under the tires, then inside teeth. Jasper reached the next exit, then saw it again. The odometer blurred, then snapped back. The mirror showed only darkness behind him. Jasper's dash clock froze on 1 minute again. At sunrise, his truck was found off Highway 6. The engine block was still warm. The driver door hung open, swinging slowly. His phone lay inside, screen shattered and dark. There were no footprints around the truck. No tire marks led away from it. His last log entry ended mid-sentence. No one filed a missing person report that week. Work rosters showed Jasper still scheduled. His payroll direct deposit continued for 1 cycle. Messages sent to his number never delivered. The basin stayed silent, as if satisfied. Jasper feared the lights, but feared silence more. He learned denial can be enforced quietly. He watched coworkers ignore impossible failures without blinking. Then Jasper vanished, leaving only a warm truck. If a doublekin heard you, who arrives afterward? Was Jasper removed, replaced, or archived somewhere nearby? Drop your theory below, then like and subscribe for more cases. An indigo UFO hovered above Eielson runway, pulsing every 3 seconds. A small blue alien stood on snow, staring at Mason. 1 minute froze every device, while it watched him breathe. Mason hauled R-11 fuel at Eielson, night after night. Pilots joked about ghosts, but the runway had stranger rules. Blue lights sometimes floated beyond hangars, then vanished. Security logs showed gaps, and cameras saved black frames. Older crews whispered about an indigo UFO near the eastern tree line. They said a small blue alien walked the snow like it owned. Mason ignored the talk until his radio carried breathing. Cold nights made engines complain, but this silence felt engineered. On February 9, 2019, the rumors became a shift order. Night shift started with fuel smell and frozen breath. Mason drove the R-11 truck behind hangars alone. 4 F-16s waited with frost-crusted skins. He topped tanks with JP-8 under harsh floodlights. Jet exhaust left faint heat ghosts in snow fog. He cleared the main line and took the ring road. The road lay empty, lit by runway spill. The radio hiss thickened, like sand pouring through speakers. The hiss had rhythm, like slow inhaling. A clean indigo glow appeared above eastern snow. It pulsed every 3 seconds, perfectly timed. The UFO hung low, heavy light with no shadow. Mason watched the pulse reflect on icy taxi lines. His phone screen flickered, then looped 1942 and 1943. The digits swapped places by themselves each pulse. The truck clock froze, then jumped forward in blocks. Mason tapped the dash, and nothing responded. The UFO moved closer without sound or exhaust. Distance shrank too fast for any aircraft. Blue light spilled across the runway centerline. Snow turned glassy, bright, and painfully sharp. Security trucks stopped at the perimeter, engines idling low. Orders came clipped over a separate channel hold position. Nobody stepped closer, even with rifles ready. The sphere dropped to 50 feet above the runway. The radio hiss deepened and carried breathing again. Mason heard it between bursts of static. Each breath matched the 3-second pulse. Then something small stood under the light. A blue alien faced Mason from the snow. Its head formed a sharp triangle silhouette. Its eyes looked black and deep, without pupils. Its arms looked too long for its height. 3 fingers lifted slowly, mirroring the pulse. Mason blinked, and the alien was nearer suddenly. No footprints marked the snow between positions. Frost crawled across the windshield in geometric petals. The fuel ticket printer paused midline and clicked. The nozzle gauge needle trembled, then held steady. Mason felt chest pressure with each pulse. His ears rang without any sound. The alien tilted its head, studying his face. Runway lights flickered once, then stabilized. The alien vanished, then reappeared beside a runway marker. It stood closer than headlights should allow. The UFO brightened and dimmed like a heartbeat. Then it launched upward and erased itself in seconds. Wind returned with a rushing slap of cold air. After the runway cleared, Mason checked his paperwork in the cab. The fuel log showed a 13-minute blank gap. The truck GPS track looked straight, then stopped abruptly. The time column repeated the same minute twice. His phone history showed calls that never happened. The radio channel list reset to factory defaults. Mason replayed dash audio and heard only hiss. Under the hiss, the breathing returned for 1 beat. Maintenance pulled the truck for inspection at first light. Mechanics found nothing wrong with wiring or battery. The engine computer showed no fault codes at all. Yet every digital clock near the flight line matched one freeze. They all stopped for 1 minute, then resumed together. A lab analyst reviewed the anomaly quietly. NOAA satellite data showed the R-11 moved 200 yards. The vehicle GPS stayed frozen from 1936 to 1937. The same freeze hit radar and security monitors nearby. A camera frame showed snow mid-fall suspended. The next frame showed the same snow lower, still falling. Nobody could find the missing images between. The analyst compared mechanical and biological traces next. Tire marks continued through the frozen minute. Footprints advanced in the snow without interruption. Mason's heart monitor showed steady rhythm, no pause. He remembered blinking during that minute, twice. He remembered the alien closer than before, watching. He remembered 3 fingers lifted, then lowered. He remembered a symbol shaped like a ring. It hovered in his mind like an afterimage. The analyst said the minute was not lost for humans. They said it was denied to electronics only. They called it selective suppression of recording systems. Mason heard the phrase and felt cold again. If a device cannot record, it cannot prove anything. The base wrote interference in the official line. Mason signed the form and watched ink dry slowly. That night, he noticed a new scar on his palm. It was a pale circle with sharp edges. It did not hurt and did not fade. When he pressed it against cold glass, warmth returned. For a moment, the radio hiss inside his head came back. Mason volunteered for an observation post after that first freeze. He wanted distance from hangars and gossip. The post sat near a berm beyond runway lights. It was a small box of glass and steel. Snow drifted against its base like piled ash. The radio hiss returned there every night, patient. Before sunrise, the indigo UFO appeared again, pulsing steadily. It hovered low, then sank toward the snow. The light looked dense and heavy, yet silent. A second smaller glow formed beneath it, like a doorway. The air inside the post turned dry and cold. Mason saw his digital watch stop mid-second. A small blue alien stepped out onto the snow. It was about 4 feet tall. Its head formed a sharp triangle silhouette. Its eyes were black, deep, and without pupils. Its arms hung too long for its frame. It moved with smooth, careful efficiency. 2 taller figures appeared behind it, half inside glow. They stayed still, like guards. Their limbs looked longer and their faces looked blank. Mason could not hear footsteps on snow. He could only hear his own breath. The small alien approached the observation glass slowly. It raised a 3-fingered hand and pressed the pane. Frost bloomed outward in perfect fractal geometry. Symbols appeared inside the frost, forming a ring and line. Mason lifted his own palm to match it. Warmth rushed through his hand and up his arm. His chest pressure eased, then returned in pulses. A voice entered his mind without sound. It spoke in images, not words. He saw a frozen planet under dim stars. He saw underground bases glowing beneath ice. He saw tunnels branching like veins through stone. He saw the indigo sphere moving between points without travel. He saw runways drawn as lines on a grid. He saw Eielson as a dot within a map. He saw other dots lighting up, then dimming. The small alien shifted its head toward his face. Mason felt examined, counted, measured. The taller figures behind it leaned forward slightly. Their black eyes reflected nothing, not even his flashlight. For 3 breaths, time felt stacked in layers. One layer showed snow falling outside the glass. Another layer showed the same snow suspended midair. Another layer showed the runway empty, yet lit blue. Mason blinked and felt missing frames. The alien lifted its fingers and traced one last symbol. The symbol looked like a circle within a circle. Mason felt the hum align with his heartbeat. The post lights dimmed, then stabilized again. The alien withdrew its hand and stepped back. The doorway glow folded inward without sound. The indigo UFO rose without stirring snow. It blinked once, then launched upward and vanished. Mason looked down at his palm and saw a pale circle. The edge was sharp, like a stamp. Mason separated early in July 2019 with full benefits. He moved to Montana and tried normal routines but couldn't. Nights stayed the hardest and sleep came in fragments. He avoided mirrors and windows after dark. Indigo pulses returned in dreams, timed every 3 seconds. Sometimes he woke with radio hiss in his ears. Sometimes he woke standing, palm pressed to cold glass. He kept the pale circle scar as proof of the missing minute. He also kept the fear, sharper than winter air. He knew the record could be erased at will. If time can be edited, who decides what humans remember? Was the minute taken or planted inside him? Leave your theory below, then like and subscribe for the next file. At 1:15, a UFO hovered over the north fence. An alien silhouette crossed the warehouse roof in orange light. All 16 cameras went blank as the hum filled the yard. David had guarded government sites for 19 years. He held high clearance and signed too many NDAs. he worked a lone night shift north of Tonopah. The facility stored prototypes and sealed aerospace hardware. He knew questions earned punishment, not answers. Then the protocols started, before he understood why. At 1:15, Camera 7 turned blank without warning. The other feeds followed, one by one, then all at once. Every monitor showed empty black, yet status stayed green. David refreshed the system twice, and got the same nothing. A low hum started inside the walls, then underfoot. The air felt heavier, like the room was pressurized. He stepped outside into cold desert air and fine dust. Camera 7 was intact, but aimed straight down. Its mount was tight, like someone adjusted it carefully. Yard floodlights flickered, then shifted into dull orange. Beyond the north fence, a dark oval hovered against stars. Two smaller lights flanked it, perfectly even. Another light blinked once, then duplicated into three. The three lights formed a shallow arc and held position. They slid sideways without any travel path. A second arc appeared farther east, mirroring the first. David heard no engines, only the hum, steady and deep. The fence wires trembled once, then went perfectly still. His flashlight died in one beat, battery reading full. His phone shut off at 80%, then stayed dead. Orange light rolled across metal walls like heat without warmth. On the warehouse roof, an alien silhouette crossed fast and precise. A second alien shape followed, taller, thinner, angular. They moved like joints were hinges, not muscle. One paused at the roof edge and looked down. Another stood beside it, then vanished between frames. Above the roofline, the dark oval lowered a few feet and held steady over the fence. Smaller UFO lights rotated around it in a clean ring and pulsed in a 3-beat pattern. The hum matched those beats, like coded breathing. A low sphere drifted over the yard near the floodlights and cast no shadow. It passed a camera pole, and the pole went dark. Another sphere mirrored it on the far side, keeping perfect spacing. Then the roofline flashed with a thin blue seam. For a second, more aliens stood there in a row, heads turning together toward the yard gate. The seam closed and the roof looked empty again. The orange lights stayed on, waiting. David rushed back inside and shut the office door. The monitors stayed black, yet every status icon stayed green. He opened the event log and saw no faults. The timestamps jumped, then corrected themselves. The hum pressed harder, like a second heartbeat. He grabbed the landline and called command 40 miles south. A calm voice answered on the first ring. It asked for his unit code, not his name. David reported the orange lights and the blank feeds. The voice did not ask for repeats. It said a sweep team was already moving. It told him to keep logging everything. It warned him not to chase anything outside. David returned to the yard and kept moving slowly. He watched the roof through window reflections and metal panels. In reflection, two aliens stood at the roof edge. A third alien appeared between them, then flickered out, their limbs bent at sharp angles like jointed tools. A low sphere drifted along the fence and stopped. Another sphere mirrored it, keeping perfect distance. Each sphere pulsed once, and a camera pole died. The dark oval UFO above the fence stayed perfectly centered. Smaller lights rotated around it in a tight ring. The ring tightened, then loosened, like a breathing machine. The hum matched that motion and filled his ribs. The orange floodlights blinked in 3-beat patterns. One alien raised a hand and held a precise sign. The ring lights answered with the same 3-beat pulse. David felt his thoughts slow, then snap back. He kept his eyes on reflections and kept walking. The warehouse roof became a stage of orange light. A tall alien silhouette stood at the edge, rigid. Its body looked built from angles, not muscle. Limbs hung too long, joints narrow and sharply defined. Another alien appeared beside it without any approach. It simply occupied the space, then shifted aside. Their heads turned together, matching timing like a metronome. The roofline flashed with a thin blue seam. For one blink, more aliens stood inside that seam. They lined up like figures in a doorway. The seam closed, and they vanished again. Above the north fence, a dark oval UFO lowered and stopped. It held position with absolute steadiness, ignoring wind and gravity. Smaller lights rotated around it in a perfect ring. The ring tightened, then loosened like controlled breathing. Each light pulsed in a 3-beat pattern. A second oval appeared farther east, smaller but identical. Its ring formed instantly, matching the first ring rhythm. The two rings synced, then drifted sideways together. They shifted without any visible travel path. A third light blinked above them, then split into 6. Those 6 formed a clean hex around the first oval. Low spheres moved through the yard at shoulder height. They crossed floodlights, and the glow deepened orange. They passed camera poles, and each pole went dark. The spheres never cast shadows on gravel or steel. They stopped at measured points along the perimeter. Each stop mirrored another stop across the yard. The hum thickened and added faint clicking beneath it. The clicking sounded like counting, steady and patient. Thin beams flickered down, then vanished before touching ground. Where beams aimed, the gravel looked briefly wet and glassy. The tall alien crouched at the roof edge and dropped. It fell without sound, as if gravity was muted. It met the ground with no dust, no impact, no rebound. It moved into darkness, then appeared closer by position change. A thinner alien crossed behind it, fast and precise. The two separated and rejoined as if following a grid. One raised a long hand and folded fingers into a sign. The ring lights answered with the same pattern in pulses. A nearby sphere drifted toward the office windows and stopped. It held perfectly still, like it was listening. A blue seam opened again along the roofline and stayed open. Inside it, silhouettes looked layered, like stacked depth. Aliens stood at different distances, yet aligned in one row. The seam brightened, and the hum shifted pitch. For a moment, the two oval UFOs aligned nose to nose. Then they separated without motion or sound. Their rings rotated opposite directions, then stopped in sync. A faint geometric lattice appeared between the ovals. The lattice pulsed once, then folded inward and vanished. Then every sphere pulsed at the same instant. The ring lights flashed in a clean sequence, left to right. The roof seam closed like a cut stitched shut. Aliens on the ground blurred, then snapped into new positions. The two ovals rose together and drifted beyond the fence. Smaller lights followed in tight formation, never breaking spacing. The orange glow faded back toward harsh white. The hum lingered thin and patient, as if it stayed nearby. David stayed on shift, but something in him broke. He kept hearing the hum inside quiet rooms. Orange light followed him behind closed eyelids. He stopped trusting screens, then stopped trusting silence. Each blank camera frame felt like a warning. He checked corners twice, then checked them again. Sleep came in fragments, always ending at 1:15. He woke tasting metal, with static in his ears. 3 weeks later, he requested a transfer without explanation. He never spoke about Tanopa to anyone at work. He only wrote one line in his private notebook. They can erase feeds, but they cannot erase memory. So what did the UFOs want from that facility? Drop your theory below, then like and subscribe. At 3:17, Carlos's radio inhaled and exhaled with no signal. A UFO hovered above Bunker 12, pulsing blue through the darkness. Something tall waited inside, and his headlights forgot how to shine. Carlos Rodriguez followed one rule on night patrols. He never worked midnight on a new moon. On March 8th, he broke it for extra money. He wanted a gaming computer for his daughter. The northern sectors felt newer, quieter, and farther from help. No phone signal reached Sector E. The darkness that night felt thick enough to hold. Carlos started the midnight loop with a tight jaw. The new moon hid every ridge and marker. Sector lights sat far apart and felt useless. His tires whispered over gravel and dry salt dust. The radio hissed, then breathed like a hidden animal. Inhale arrived steady, then exhale dragged longer. He checked the channel knob twice, then froze. No signal should breathe with that rhythm. He drove past the A gate and counted fence posts. He logged each pump pad and each storage row. The air inside the cab thickened, then thinned again. His ears popped once, then rang with faint pressure. His headlights looked weaker with every mile. The gauges stayed calm and refused to explain it. The dash clock ticked, then skipped a second. Then it returned, pretending nothing happened. A pale blue pulse appeared in his left mirror. It hovered above the road behind him. It held the same distance like a measured tether. Carlos sped up and watched it match perfectly. Carlos slowed and watched it slow without delay. He turned at an access fork, and it turned with him. It never swung wide like a truck would. It never corrected like a helicopter would. It moved like it already knew his route. He killed the cabin light and watched the pulse again. It stayed blue, clean, and edged. It did not blink like a tower beacon. It did not smear like a flare in wind. The pulse slid closer to his window. The radio breathing grew louder beside his seat. Carlos felt watched from above his roofline too. A wide shadow crossed the stars, then held steady. He tried to shake it with procedure. He stopped and cut his engine. The pulse stopped and waited behind him. He reversed slowly and the pulse slid backward too. He turned his headlights off completely. The pulse stayed visible and unchanged. The breathing continued in the radio, still timed. Carlos tasted metal and felt ozone in dry air. He started the engine and rolled forward again. The pulse followed, patient, as if guiding him north. Bunker 12 rose ahead like a black tooth. The blue pulse moved first. It waited above the bunker. The shadow around it widened. It flattened across the stars. It hovered low, perfectly steady. No wind stirred beneath it. No dust lifted from gravel. The radio breathing filled the cab. It sounded closer than his own lungs. Carlos felt pressure behind his eyes. His tongue tasted metal. The windshield glass tingled with static. His headlights dimmed until the road vanished. The engine died mid-roll. The cab went dead instantly. Every LED went dark at once. The breathing continued anyway. It now lived inside his skull. A blue glow pulsed near the bunker wall. It rose and fell like deep water. Frost crept along his window edges. The cab temperature dropped hard. His breath fogged, then vanished. Something stepped down from the hovering glow. It was tall, narrow, and wrong. Its limbs were too long. Its joints were thin and hinged. Its head looked smooth and stretched. Its eyes were black and unblinking. It moved without footfalls. Gravel never cracked beneath it. It faced the bunker door and raised one hand. The latch clicked without any touch. The door opened 6 inches. It stopped and held. Blue light breathed through the gap. A thin hiss rode the rhythm. It sounded like speech without syllables. Carlos felt a clean pull in thoughts. His body obeyed before refusal. He opened the truck door. Cold air bit through his jacket. The ground felt tilted. The alien stood at the crack. It waited like a handler. It turned slightly, inviting him closer. Carlos walked forward, sleepwalking. The blue glow painted his hands. His watch face flashed once. Then it froze at 3:17. He reached for the door edge. His fingers shook but still moved. The alien leaned back, making room. The bunker air breathed out at him. Carlos stepped toward the bunker without choosing the step. The air felt pressurized, then hollow, then pressurized again. Cold seeped through his jacket and into his bones. The radio breathing followed him out of the cab. It did not fade with distance. The alien waited at the cracked doorway, perfectly still. Carlos saw blue light crawl along the concrete seam. He smelled ozone, metal, and something sterile. The watch on his wrist stopped at 3:17. The threshold felt like walking through deep water. His skin prickled, then went numb. A low hum rose from the floor into his teeth. A thin hiss threaded through the breathing, tight and sharp. He heard faint clicks inside the walls, like tiny relays. The corridor looked longer than the bunker should allow. The blue light did not reflect like normal light. His shadow disappeared, then reappeared, then disappeared again. A perfect frost circle waited on the concrete floor. The edge looked cut with a tool. Crystal branches formed sharp geometric patterns. His boot stepped onto the ring, and pain spiked upward. It ran from shin to knee in one flash. His vision shimmered as if heat rose from ice. He tried to lift his foot and could not. The hum pulsed, then paused, then pulsed again. Each pulse tightened his chest like a clamp. The alien moved deeper, and Carlos followed like a leash. Blue lines ran along wall seams like veins. Symbols lit briefly, then rearranged themselves. He could not hold their shapes in memory. The breathing rhythm slowed until it matched his heartbeat. Then it led his heartbeat again. The corridor widened into a room with no clear corners. The ceiling felt higher than any bunker ceiling. Images slammed into his mind in hard bursts. He saw the desert mapped by grids from above. He saw an ocean lit blue under black sky. He saw smooth rooms with angles that refused perspective. He saw humans frozen mid-step, eyes open, mouths silent. He saw a clock hand split into 2 hands. He heard a chorus of distant machinery, steady and ancient. His stomach turned as if gravity shifted sideways. A human voice cut through the radio like a rope. Unit 4, respond now. Repeat, respond now. The command snapped his mind back into place. The blue glow faltered for one beat. Carlos saw the alien closer than before, inches away. Its eyes reflected nothing, not even blue light. Then it faded backward into the glow. Carlos stumbled, turned, and ran for the truck. Behind him, the bunker door breathed once more. Back at the station, they showed him the recordings. For 66 minutes, Carlos never left the seat. He sat rigid, hands on the wheel, eyes unblinking. Yet the bunker camera showed the door open in blue light. Carlos understood he lost an hour while staying awake. What do you think the bunker did to him? Comment your theory, then like and subscribe for more Midnight Facility files. A UFO shadowed Miguel for 7 miles along Highway 380. An alien appeared beside his cruiser under blue-white glare. Then the radio replayed Miguel's voice in metallic layers. Miguel Torres served as deputy sheriff in rural New Mexico. He knew long roads and longer silences. Reports came from the Roswell to Socorro corridor. Drivers described white beams, dead clocks, and missing minutes. Miguel logged them, then stopped writing details. Someone always arrived before sunrise. Evidence vanished. Witnesses went quiet. The highway stayed open, like nothing happened. Miguel called dispatch from a dirt turnout and reported position. Static answered first, then the hum returned again. He reported an orange-white glow low on the horizon. The speaker returned his words slightly higher than normal. It sounded like him, but hollow and metallic. He repeated the report and listened for human mistakes. There were none, only perfect timing and clean cadence. Miguel checked the handset and the speaker grill. He checked the antenna cable and the dash fuse. Nothing changed, yet the hum stayed exact. The glow held steady above the scrub, never drifting. Miguel watched it brighten, then hold, then brighten again. It behaved like something noticing his attention. He whispered a curse and swallowed dry air. The radio clicked and echoed his whisper back. The echo arrived with no breath and no emotion. Miguel eased onto the service trail and advanced slowly. The glow split into 2 lights, 30 feet apart. Both lights stayed at the same low altitude. They slid forward without drift like pinned objects. Miguel kept his hands visible on the wheel. He changed speed twice to test them. The lights matched every change with precision. The hum landed with every skipped movement. The dashboard clock froze, then jumped ahead. The GPS map froze while tires still rolled forward. Miguel saw dust lift, then hang, then drop. The road looked darker under bright glare. He lifted a flashlight toward the nearest light. The beam bent away, curving around empty air. His ears filled with pressure without sound. His teeth ached like vibration inside bone. Miguel spoke again, slower, forcing calm. The radio returned his sentence as layered metallic echoes. The lights slid overhead and centered above his hoodline. Miguel felt watched by something counting his reactions. The 2 lights began skipping forward like missing film frames. Each skip arrived with the timed hum. A blue-white column formed beneath the left light. The column had hard edges like cut glass. It did not illuminate asphalt the normal way. The ground stayed dark, as if light was removed. Miguel swept his flashlight across the column again. The beam curved, then vanished, then returned behind it. Cold flooded the cabin without wind. His breath fogged, then stopped fogging, then returned. The engine idled steady, yet sounded distant and thin. The shifter trembled, then settled, then trembled again. Miguel gripped the wheel until his knuckles hurt. The hum deepened and pressed behind his eyes. His vision tightened, then widened, then snapped back. The lights above seemed closer, but never moved downward. They held position with unnatural steadiness. A dim silhouette appeared behind the lights. It looked wider than the road itself. Miguel could not find an edge or seam. The sky behind it looked wrong, darker than darkness. An alien stepped out from the blue column and faced him. It was tall, thin, and wrong in proportion. Its head looked smooth and elongated, with black almond eyes. Its limbs moved without sway, as if guided. It raised one long hand toward the windshield. Miguel heard meaning inside his head without words. The meaning felt like a calm command forward. His shifter moved by itself, then stopped again. The steering tugged left, then centered itself. Miguel fought both, breathing through sharp chest pressure. The alien leaned closer without footsteps or sound. Its fingers flexed with too many segments. The joints rippled, then locked, then rippled again. The radio clicked and spoke using Miguel's voice. The voice had no breath and no fear. It repeated his last sentence exactly, then paused. Miguel answered and heard himself return, slightly delayed. The returned voice sounded older and thinner. The alien tilted its head, studying his mouth. The lights above tightened, as if focusing. The blue column widened, then wrapped the cruiser in haze. Miguel tried honking, but the horn stayed silent. He tried shouting, but his voice felt distant. The hum continued, steady and patient. Miguel tried reversing, but distance felt unreal. The tires rolled, yet the scene refused change. The dashboard numbers drifted slowly, then froze again. The GPS showed impossible locations, then went blank. A thin smell of ozone filled the cabin. Miguel tasted copper and swallowed hard. The cabin air felt electrically dry. His skin prickled beneath his sleeves. The hum pressed deeper, like heavy fingers behind eyes. His heartbeat lagged behind itself. He watched his hands and felt delayed control. He blinked and saw double for seconds. The haze brightened, then dimmed, then brightened again. Shadows moved inside it, inverted and deliberate. Miguel saw dark forms hanging above the road. He saw long hands reaching toward the cabin outline. No door opened, yet he felt exposed. The alien raised its hand toward the glass again. Miguel felt a cold touch on his forehead. The touch arrived without contact. His hearing flattened, as if depth got removed. He could not hear the engine anymore. He still felt its vibration through the seat. Geometric symbols flickered across the windshield like brief frost. The symbols rotated and reassembled with cold precision. Miguel blinked, and they stayed one heartbeat longer. Then they vanished, leaving clean glass again. The radio replayed Miguel again, closer and older. The voice sounded like metal vibrating in water. It repeated a new phrase he never spoke. The phrase carried a gentle insistence forward. Miguel felt his thoughts separating into layers. One layer screamed and another stayed calm. The calm layer watched everything with detached interest. Miguel tried counting seconds, but numbers lost meaning. The haze tightened and pressed around the cruiser. His chest pressure spiked, then eased, then spiked again. His teeth ached with each hum pulse. The alien leaned back, then pointed down the trail. The two lights slid forward a few yards. Then they stopped and waited, perfectly still. Miguel felt that waiting as a demand. Images slammed into Miguel's mind without warning. He saw underground rooms beneath the highway corridor. He saw walls covered in moving symbols like circuitry. He saw rows of people standing with open eyes. He saw them dissolve into points of light. He saw those points stored inside a vast grid. A star map pulsed above the grid like a heartbeat. Each pulse matched the hum timing exactly. He saw his own cruiser from above. He saw himself sitting rigid, eyes unblinking. He saw the alien standing beside the hood line. He saw another figure behind the haze, taller still. The taller figure did not step forward. It stayed outside the light, observing. Sound snapped back like a slammed door in a tunnel. The haze vanished without fading or travel. Both lights winked out in the same instant. Miguel blinked and found gravel under his boots. He was far from the cruiser on open scrub. His cruiser sat locked, engine idling, lights still on. No footprints led away from the doors. No tracks crossed scrub between him and the car. Miguel staggered toward the road, dizzy and nauseated. A distant radio squawk cut through the returning night. Headlights appeared on the trail behind him. Responders circled the cruiser, checking doors and glass. They found Miguel lying beyond the beam edge. His eyes were open but unfocused. He tried speaking and produced metallic layered syllables. The syllables repeated with the hum rhythm. Then his normal voice returned in a rush. He asked why his car was moved. He insisted he never left the driver's seat. His hands shook as he touched his own face. He kept staring toward the empty sky. Station video showed Miguel sitting motionless for hours, never blinking once. When they found him, he was miles from the cruiser. Why do you think the UFO left his body but took his time? Comment your theory, then like and subscribe. At 12:17, every light in Hanksville died together. The sky turned red and the hum arrived. Above Main Street, a craft hovered without sound. Sam worked nights in a town built on distance. He knew every generator, every shortcut, every silence. Then 12:17 locked itself into every clock, and the visitors began repeating it. The blackout hit like a command, not a failure. Phones went dark at once, engines refused to turn over, even battery radios stayed mute. Sam stepped outside and felt pressure in his teeth. The air tasted dry and metallic. The sky was not night anymore. It was a deep red dome. A low hum rose from the ground itself. It vibrated his ribs and tongue. Streetlights stayed dead, but the road glowed faintly. A white ring appeared above the water tower. It held perfectly still. Then it split into 3 points. Each point pulsed in the same rhythm. The 3 points folded into a triangle craft. The craft drifted over roofs without wind. Its underside showed moving geometry. The lines crawled like living circuitry. Sam tried his truck again. The starter clicked once, then stopped. The dash display froze on 1217. His wristwatch stopped on 1217. A neighbor yelled from a porch, then stopped mid-sound. The mouth stayed open, but no voice came. Sam heard his own heartbeat vanish. The hum replaced it. The triangle craft lowered until it filled the street. A blue-white glow spilled downward. It did not reflect on windows. It did not cast shadows. Figures appeared inside the glow. They were tall and thin, their joints bent in wrong angles, their heads tilted together in perfect unison. One figure raised a hand toward Sam. The hand had long fingers. The fingers opened and closed slowly. Sam felt a thought, not a sound. The thought carried one number only: 17. The red sky snapped back to black. Power returned in one breath. Cars restarted all at once. The hum ended cleanly. Sam checked his phone time. It read 12:17 again. The call logs were blank. His camera roll showed only static. After that night, 17 began hunting the town. Sam woke at 1:17. He woke at 2:17. He woke at 3:17. He stopped trusting sleep. Every morning he found new 7s and 1s. Receipts ended in 17. Fuel pumps stopped on 17 cents. Mile markers blurred, then sharpened. Sam drove the town limits at dusk. He watched the sky for triangles. He watched the desert for rings. The hum returned before the lights changed. At 3:17, the street sign rotated by itself. The bolts stayed rusted and fixed. The sign turned anyway, smooth and silent. Sam filmed it, then lost the file. A generator at the diner spun backward. The light stayed bright and steady. The engine notes stayed normal. The mechanic swore it was impossible. Near the courthouse, dead trees budded green overnight. The leaves looked too glossy. They held no insects. They held no smell. Sam followed the hum to the center road. There, asphalt had been rewritten. A huge 17 burned into the surface. It was 20 feet wide. He knelt and touched the edge. The asphalt felt warm, then cold. His fingertips tingled, then went numb. The hum shifted into a higher tone. A small sphere appeared above the 17. It hovered at head height. It was blacker than night. It swallowed his flashlight beam. The sphere unfolded into a thin disc. The disc split into 6 smaller discs. They arranged into a perfect hexagon. Then they rotated without moving air. From the hexagon, 2 beings stepped forward. They were thinner than the first night. Their skin looked matte and smooth. Their faces lacked clear features. Sam tried to speak, but his throat locked. He tried to run, but his legs lagged. The beings did not chase. They only watched. A new thought entered his mind. It carried images, not words. Sam saw Hanksville empty and preserved. He saw a crystal tower at the center. He saw the triangle craft under the town. He saw tunnels beneath every home. He saw the number 17 pulsing like a heartbeat. The discs rose together and vanished. The sphere winked out last. The huge 17 remained, still warm. The next month, the pattern came back stronger. It always chose the 17th. It always began at 12:17. Sam started counting days like a prison wall. On the 17th, the horizon dimmed early. The stars looked closer than normal. The hum arrived before midnight. Sam felt it inside his organs. At 12:17, the town died again. Not just power. Sound died too. Wind stopped. Dogs stopped barking mid-breath. A ring of blue light formed above Main Street. It expanded slowly across the sky. The ring became a dome. The dome pressed down like heavy glass. Inside the dome, dozens of triangle crafts appeared. They held formation in a grid. Beneath them, small spheres drifted street to street. Beings walked between houses with measured steps. Their bodies moved too smoothly. Their heads turned together on exact timing. They never touched doors. Where they looked, reality changed. Paint peeled, then restored. Cracks sealed, then reopened. A mailbox aged 50 years, then reset. Sam watched his own shadow detach from his feet. It slid across the porch by itself. It rose and stood beside him. It copied his posture. The shadow shape wore his outline, but wrong. Its eyes were empty holes. It tilted its head, then held still. The hum grew louder. A triangle craft lowered above Sam's street. A beam fell onto the asphalt. The beam drew a new 17 in light. The light sank into the road. Two beings approached the beam edge. They stopped and faced Sam. One lifted a long hand. The other tilted its head farther than bones allow. Sam felt heat behind his eyes. He saw a corridor of red sky. He saw Hanksville from far above. He saw the town slide sideways in space. He grabbed his keys and ran for his truck. The engine started, then stalled. The dashboard froze at 12:17. The steering wheel felt numb. A sphere floated into the windshield view. It showed a moving image on its surface. The image was Sam driving, but empty-eyed. The image smiled wrong. The dome began sinking lower. Streetlights bent inward toward its edge. Dust rose, then hung in place. The air thickened like cold water. Sam forced the truck into neutral and pushed downhill. The tires rolled without sound. The hum filled everything. His thoughts came in broken pieces. At the town limit sign, the road vanished for a second. The desert became a black wall. Then the road returned, slightly shifted. Sam blinked and found himself outside the dome. He fell to his knees on gravel. Behind him, Hanksville looked normal again. Then the town lights flickered once. A faint blue dome flashed and disappeared. The hum stopped, leaving silence too wide. Sam drove away before dawn. In his mirror, the town shrank into darkness. At 3:17, his phone lit up by itself. The screen showed one message. It showed only 17. Hanksville acted like a timed experiment, not a haunting. The repeated 17 looked like a control signal. The crafts and beings behaved like surveyors. Sam escaped, but the pattern followed his sleep. What would you do at 12:17 inside that dome? Like and subscribe for the next report.